Hi guys! Tonight we step softly into a world so distant that it almost feels unreal. A place where the air is cooler, the ground untouched, and the silence carries a kind of quiet depth you rarely notice in modern life. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, I would love to know where you are in the world right now and what time it is for you. There is something quietly comforting about knowing that people across different places are listening together in the same calm moment. Now dim the lights and let yourself drift gently into a time long before cities, before roads, before even the idea of history itself. You find yourself standing on open land. It stretches endlessly around you, soft and uneven beneath your feet. The ground is a mixture of dry soil and scattered stones, still holding a faint warmth from the day. The air carries a cool edge, now brushing lightly against your skin as evening settles in. There is no sound of engines, no distant hum of electricity, no artificial glow, only the natural rhythm of the world. A breeze moves slowly through sparse vegetation, creating a faint whispering sound. Somewhere far away, an animal calls out into the fading light. The sound echoes briefly, then disappears, leaving the quiet even deeper than before. You begin to walk. Your steps are careful at first, not out of fear but out of unfamiliarity. The land does not guide you in the way modern paths do. There are no clear directions here, no signs or boundaries. Each step feels like a small decision made in the moment, and as you move, you start to notice something subtle. There is a presence in this world, not close enough to see clearly, but not entirely absent either. A mainstream understanding of early human history suggests that the first members of our lineage appeared in Africa several million years ago, gradually adapting to environments that shifted between forests and open grasslands. These early hominins were not yet fully human in the way we would recognize today, but they carried the beginnings of something that would eventually reshape the planet. You pause for a moment at listening. The light is fading now, turning the sky into soft layers of orange and deepening blue. Shadows stretch longer across the land, blending into one another until the ground itself seems to change shape. You notice movement in the distance. At first, it is difficult to focus on, just a slight shift in the landscape, but as your eyes adjust, the shapes become clearer. Figures! Small, upright, moving slowly. They are not like you, and yet they are not entirely different either. You remain still watching from afar. They move together in a loose group, their steps unhurried, their attention spread across the environment. One of them pauses, bending slightly toward the ground, picking something up. Another looks outward, scanning the horizon. There is no rush in their movements. Everything feels measured, intentional. You might expect urgency in a place like this, where survival is uncertain and danger is never far away, but instead there is a quiet rhythm, a balance between action and stillness. A curious detail often noted by researchers is that early human groups likely spent a significant portion of their time not in constant struggle but in periods of calm activity such as gathering, resting, and observing their surroundings. Life was difficult, certainly, but not always frantic. You take a slow breath. The air smells faintly of earth and something dry, almost like sun-warmed grass, lingering into the evening. The group begins to move again and you follow at a distance. Not too close, just enough to observe. Their bodies are different from yours. Slightly smaller, their posture not entirely upright but close. Their movements are efficient, conserving energy in a way that feels almost instinctive. One of them makes a soft sound, not quite a word, but not meaningless either. Another responds. And for a moment, you sense the beginning of something. Communication. Simple but purposeful. Scholars continue to question exactly when structured language began to emerge, but many agree that even early hominins likely used vocalizations, gestures, and expressions to share information and maintain group cohesion. You notice how the others react. A slight turn of the head, a change in direction. The sound carried meaning, even if it was not yet language as we know it. The light fades further. The sky deepens into darker shades and the temperature begins to drop. You feel it first on your hands, then along your arms, a gentle but as steady cooling that signals the arrival of night. The group slows. They begin to gather in a slightly more enclosed area, where the land dips gently and a few scattered rocks provide minimal shelter from the wind. They settle, not all at once, but gradually. One sits, another crouches, a third remains standing watching the horizon for a moment longer, before finally lowering themselves to the ground. There is no fire. Not yet. Only the fading light of the sky and the slow adjustment of their eyes to the darkness. You might find it surprising, but evidence suggests that controlled use of fire did not become widespread until much later in human evolution. Before that, nights were darker, colder, and far more uncertain. You sit as well, a short distance away, close enough to feel the shared stillness. The sounds of the night begin to emerge. Insects, faint movements in the grass, the occasional distant call of an animal. Each sound stands out clearly in the absence of anything else. You notice how still the group becomes. Movement slows, breathing deepens, energy is conserved. A quirky observation sometimes mentioned in anthropological studies is that early humans likely adapted to long periods of low activity during the night, relying heavily on daylight hours for most tasks. Night was a time not for productivity but for rest and quiet awareness. You feel your own body responding to the environment. Your breathing slows, your thoughts soften. There is nothing to check, nothing to respond to. No sudden interruptions. Just the steady passage of time. You look up. The sky is now filled with stars. Clear, bright, unobstructed. Without artificial light, the night sky reveals itself, fully stretching endlessly above you. Patterns begin to form as you look longer. Familiar shapes, though unnamed, seem to connect across the darkness. Some historians suggest that early humans may have used the stars for orientation or storytelling, though the exact origins of this practice remain uncertain and debated. You continue to watch. The group remains quiet. Occasionally someone shifts slightly, adjusting their position on the ground. A hand moves, a head tilts, but mostly there is stillness, shared presence, and in that stillness you begin to notice something deeper, a kind of awareness, not just of the environment, but of each other. They remain close, not touching constantly, but never far apart. There is safety in proximate, comfort in numbers. You might wonder how much they understood about their own existence, about the world they lived in, about the future. The truth is we do not fully know. Researchers continue to debate the extent of self-awareness and abstract thought in early hominins. Some suggest a limited understanding focused primarily on immediate survival. Others believe the foundations of deeper thinking were already quietly forming. You shift slightly, feeling the ground beneath you. It is firm but not uncomfortable. The air continues to cool, but your body adjusts, slowly. Naturally, time passes, not measured in minutes or hours, but in sensation, in breath, in the gradual deepening of night. And as you sit there, surrounded by this early version of humanity, you begin to sense something quietly remarkable. They do not dominate this world. Not yet. They are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most protected. And yet, they are here, present, adapting, enduring. There is no clear sign in this moment that they will one day become the dominant species on the planet. No indication of cities or technology or global influence. Just small figures in a vast landscape, resting under the stars. And perhaps that is what makes this moment so intriguing. Because somewhere within these quiet, unremarkable scenes, something is beginning, something subtle. Something gradual. A shift that no one here can fully see. And as you remain still, breathing slowly, listening to the quiet sounds of the night, you realize that understanding this transformation will take time. A long, gentle journey, one that unfolds step by step, just like the path you have begun. You remain where you are for a while, letting the quiet settle deeper into your awareness. The group nearby has grown almost completely still, now their movements reduced to small adjustments. Subtle shifts of weight, slow breaths that rise and fall in an unspoken rhythm. But as you sit there, something begins to change. Not around you, but in your sense of time. It stretches, gently, almost as if the night itself is inviting you to look further back beyond this moment, beyond these early figures resting in the darkness. And so without any sudden movement, your awareness drifts. Backward, further into the past. The land around you begins to shift slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The scattered rocks, the faint traces of human presence, the quiet signs of watchful awareness all begin to fade, and in their place something older emerges. The air feels heavier now, warmer. The vegetation thickens, spreading outward in dense layers of green. Trees rise higher, their branches stretching wide, forming a canopy that filters the light into soft shifting pattern. You are no longer in a world shaped by human presence. You are in a world that belongs entirely to nature. A mainstream understanding in earth science explains that for most of the planet's history, long before humans appeared, ecosystems were dominated by a wide range of species, each adapted to specific environments that shifted over millions of years. Forests expanded and receded, climates warmed and cooled, and life evolved continuously in response. You begin to walk again. This time the ground beneath your feet feels softer, layered with fallen leaves and damp soil. Each step produces a faint sound, a quiet compression that blends into the surrounding environment. There are sounds everywhere now, not loud, but constant. Insects moving through the undergrowth, leaves brushing lightly against one another. The distant rustle of something larger moving deeper within the forest. You pause, listening. The air carries a rich scent and a mixture of earth, moisture and plant life. It is fuller than before, more complex, almost overwhelming at first, but gradually becoming familiar as you breathe it in. You notice movement ahead. A shape passes between the trees, low to the ground. Quick! Gone before you can fully focus on it. You remain still for a moment, allowing your eyes to adjust. Then another movement, slower this time. A large animal, its body partially hidden by the vegetation, moves cautiously across your field of vision. Its steps are deliberate, its attention alert, constantly scanning for signs of danger. In this world, everything is watching, everything is listening. A lesser-known detail often discussed in paleontology is that many prehistoric ecosystems were defined by a delicate balance between predators and prey, where survival depended not only on strength or speed, but on awareness and timing. You continue walking slowly, carefully. There is no clear path here. Only open space between dense growth shaped by the movement of animals over time. The light above shifts as the canopy moves gently with the wind, creating patterns that change from moment to moment. Bright patches appear briefly, then fade as shadows return. You might notice how different this feels from the world you came from. There is no sense of control here, no structured environment, no predictable routine, only constant adjustment. Researchers remain divided on exactly how early primate ancestors navigated these environments, but many agree that adaptability rather than dominance was the key to survival. You step over a fallen branch. It is damp to the touch, softened by time and exposure. Small organisms move across its surface, barely noticeable unless you look closely. Life exists at every level here, not just in the large visible forms, but in the small, almost invisible ones as well. You hear a sudden sound above you, a sharp movement. You look up. Something leaps from one branch to another, moving quickly through the trees. Its motion is fluid, precise, almost effortless. It disappears just as quickly as it appeared. You remain still for a moment, watching the space it left behind. This world is not empty. It is full, densely alive, and yet it feels balanced. No single presence dominates. Everything exists within its place. You begin to understand something quietly important. This is the world before world before humans, not waiting for them, not shaped for them, simply existing on its own. A quirky observation sometimes mentioned by scientists is that if you were to remove humans entirely from Earth's timeline, the planet would continue evolving, filled with life forms that adapt and change without any need for human involvement. You continue forward. The forest begins to thin, slightly opening into a broader landscape. The trees become more spaced out, allowing more light to reach the ground. The air feels different here, less enclosed, more open. You step into a clearing. Grass stretches outward, interrupted by small clusters of shrubs. The horizon becomes visible again, extending far into the distance. And with that openness comes a different kind of awareness. You can see further, but you are also more visible. A group of animals grazes in the distance, their movements calm but cautious. Every so often one lifts its head, scanning the surroundings before returning to feed. You notice how they move together, not tightly grouped, but not completely separate either. There is a shared understanding, a balance between independence and connection. Some historians of evolutionary biology suggest that herd behavior developed as a way to reduce individual risk, allowing animals to rely on group awareness rather than constant personal vigilance. You stand quietly observing. There is no urgency here, only movement that responds to need. You begin to realize that this world operates on a different rhythm than your own. There is no concept of progress, no sense of building towards something greater, only continuation, adaptation, change without direction. And yet within this seemingly simple system, complexity exists at every level. From the smallest insect to the largest animal, each plays a role in maintaining the balance of the environment. You take a slow breath. The air feels warm against your lungs, carrying the subtle scent of grass and distant water. Somewhere far off you hear the sound of movement again, but this time it is different, more cautious, more deliberate. You turn slightly, your attention drawn toward the edge of the clearing. There is nothing immediately visible, but the feeling remains, a presence, faint, uncertain, and then it passes, gone as quietly as it came. You remain still, listening, watching. In this world, survival depends on noticing what is not always obvious, on sensing changes before they become visible. Researchers continue to question how early life forms developed such acute awareness, but many agree that sensory perception played a critical role long before higher intelligence emerged. You take another step forward. The ground is warm beneath your feet. The light continues to shift as the day moves slowly toward evening once again. And as you stand there surrounded by a world that exists entirely without human influence, you begin to understand something subtle. Humans did not begin as rulers of this environment. They entered it quietly, as one presence among many, no stronger, no faster, no more protected, just another form of life shaped by the same forces that shaped everything else. And perhaps that is what makes their eventual rise so difficult to fully explain. Because here, in this moment, there is no sign of dominance, only balance, only coexistence. And as the light softens and the shadows begin to stretch once more across the land, you feel that gentle pull again, that slow movement of time, guiding you forward, or perhaps further into the story. The open clearing lingers in your awareness for a moment longer, its quiet balance still echoing in your mind. The grazing animals remain calm. The wind moves softly through the grass, and the light continues its slow descent toward evening. But once again something begins to shift. Not abruptly, not in a way that startles you, but gradually, like a change in temperature you only notice after some time has passed. The air cools slightly, the vegetation begins to thin, the dense forest and open grassland soften into a more varied landscape, one that feels less abundant, more uncertain. You take a step forward and the ground beneath your feet feels different now. Firmer in some places, scattered with patches of dry earth and stone. The lush growth you noticed before gives way to something more sparse. You begin to sense it. This is not a place of easy survival. This is a place of adjustment. A mainstream understanding in paleoanthropology suggests that early hominids evolved during periods of significant environmental change, particularly in Africa, where shifting climates transformed dense forests into more open savannas. These changes force species to adapt or disappear. You walk slowly across the uneven terrain. The air feels drier here. The scent of moisture has faded, replaced by something more neutral, almost dusty. A faint wind moves across the land, carrying small particles that brush lightly against your skin. There are fewer sounds, not silent, but quieter than before. The constant background of insects and dense life has thinned, replaced by occasional isolated noises. A distant rustle, a brief call, then stillness again. You notice movement ahead. At first, it is difficult to distinguish from the landscape itself. But as you look more closely, shapes begin to form. Figures similar to those you saw before, but here they appear more exposed, more aware. A small group moves across the open ground, their posture slightly bent, but more upright than the primates you might imagine. Their steps are careful, their pace steady, their attention constantly shifting between the ground and the horizon. You remain at a distance observing. They do not seem rushed, but they are alert. Every movement has purpose. One of them pauses, crouching low to the ground. Their hand moves across the surface, brushing aside small stones, searching for something not immediately visible. Another stands slightly apart, watching, not in fear, but in readiness. You begin to understand that this environment demands a different kind of awareness. In the dense forest, survival meant blending in, listening closely, moving quietly among many layers of life. Here, survival means seeing far, reacting early, conserving energy. A lesser-known detail in human evolution is that early hominins likely spent long periods walking across open landscapes in search of food and water, developing endurance rather than speed as a key survival trait. You follow slowly, keeping your distance. The ground stretches out in uneven patterns, patches of dry grass mixed with bare soil. Occasionally, a cluster of low shrubs breaks the openness, offering minimal shelter but little concealment. The sky feels larger here, more exposed. The sun, now lower in the sky, casts long shadows that stretch across the land, creating shapes that shift as you move. One of the figures straightens slightly, not fully upright, but more than before. You notice it clearly now. Their posture allows them to see further, to scan the environment with less effort. A widely accepted observation among researchers is that bipedalism, the ability to walk on two legs, offered several advantages, including improved visibility over tall grasses, energy efficiency during long-distance travel, and the ability to carry objects. You watch as one of them lifts something from the ground, a small object, hard to see from where you stand. They turn it in their hand, examining it briefly before placing it into a simple fold of material, or perhaps just holding it carefully as they continue walking. There is intention in the movement. Even if the purpose is not entirely clear, you might wonder what they're thinking, whether they plan ahead, whether they remember past experiences, whether they anticipate what comes next. Researchers continue to question the cognitive abilities of early hominins, with some suggesting that while their thinking was more advanced than earlier primates, it was still closely tied to immediate needs and environmental cues. The group continues moving. Their pace remains steady, unhurried, but never careless. You notice how often they pause, not for rest alone, but to observe, to listen, to adjust. A quirky detail sometimes mentioned in studies of early human behavior is that walking itself may have played a role in cognitive development, as navigating complex environments required constant decision-making and awareness. You take another step forward. The wind shifts slightly, bringing with it a faint scent, dry grass, and something else, faint but noticeable. The group reacts almost immediately. Subtle changes, a slight turn of the head, a pause. Their bodies become more still, more focused. They are sensing something. You follow their gaze. In the distance, barely visible against the shifting landscape, there is movement. Low, slow, difficult to distinguish, but present. Predator. The word forms quietly in your mind, though it is not spoken here. The group does not panic. There is no sudden movement, no frantic escape. Instead, they adjust. They gather slightly closer, not tightly, but enough to reduce distance between them. One steps slightly forward, another shifts to the side. Their formation changes. You begin to see it. This is not random. This is response. A coordinated awareness. Scholars remain divided on how early such group coordination developed, but many believe that even simple forms of cooperation would have provided a significant advantage in environments where threats were constant. The distant movement continues for a moment, then fades. The predator moves on, or perhaps loses interest. The tension eases, gradually. The group resumes movement, as if nothing unusual has happened. But something has. You felt it, that quiet moment of a shared awareness, of silent communication, of collective response. And it leaves an impression. You continue following. The light continues to soften. The temperature begins to drop again as evening approaches. The land stretches endlessly, offering no clear destination. Only continuation. You notice how their movements conserve energy. No unnecessary steps. No wasted effort. Each action serves a purpose. A practical understanding of early human survival suggests that conserving energy was essential as food was not guaranteed and effort had to be carefully balanced with reward. You slow your own pace, matching theirs, letting your steps become quieter, more deliberate. The wind brushes gently against your skin. The ground feels firm beneath your feet. The sky deepens in colour. And as you move alongside these early figures, observing their quiet struggle to survive, in a world that offers no certainty, you begin to sense something important. They are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most protected, and yet they continue, step by step, adjusting, learning, enduring. There is no clear sign even now that they will one day dominate this world. No indication that their small decisions, their quiet movements, their subtle awareness will lead to something larger. Only this, a group moving across open land, carrying with them the beginnings of change. Slow, unseen, but already in motion. And as the last light of the day fades into the horizon, and the first traces of night begin to settle once more, you feel that gentle pull again. The story continuing, one quiet step at a time. The night settles once more across the open land, and for a while everything returns to that quiet, steady rhythm you have begun to recognize. The group moves less now, their bodies lower to the ground again, their energy carefully preserved as darkness deepens. The sky above fills with stars sharp and bright against the vast stretch of black. The air cools steadily, brushing against your skin with a gentle persistence. You remain nearby still and observant, your breathing slowing to match the pace of the world around you. And then, as before, your sense of time begins to shift, softly, gradually. The landscape does not change all at once, but something subtle begins to unfold. You notice it first in the posture of the figures. Small differences, barely visible at first, but present. When the light returns, you see them again moving across the land. But now, something about the way they carry themselves has changed. They are standing a little taller, not fully upright in the way you're used to, but closer, more balanced. You begin to follow again, your steps quiet, your attention focused. The ground remains dry, scattered with patches of grass and exposed soil. The air carries that same faint scent of earth and distance, with only occasional traces of vegetation. But the figures ahead move with a new kind of rhythm. Their steps seem longer, more efficient. Their bodies sway less. Their heads remain higher. A widely accepted idea in evolutionary science is that the shift toward walking on two legs, known as bipedalism, marked a turning point in human development. It allowed early humans to travel longer distances, while using less energy compared to moving on four limbs. You watch as one of them pauses. They rise slightly more upright than the others, their gaze extending out across the land. Their eyes move slowly, scanning the horizon, taking in details that would be difficult to notice from a lower position. You begin to understand. Height brings awareness, even a small increase. In this open environment, being able to see further could mean the difference between safety and danger. Another member of this group adjusts their posture as well, straightening slightly before continuing forward. The movement feels natural, not forced, as if their bodies are gradually adapting, finding a new balance over time. You might wonder how long this change took. Not days, not years, but thousands of generations. A slow process shaped by countless small adjustments. Researchers often point out that evolutionary changes do not happen with intention, but through gradual selection over time, where traits that offer even a slight advantage become more common across generations. You continue walking, matching their pace. The sun climbs higher now, casting a soft warmth across the land. The shadows shorten and the air becomes more comfortable, though still dry. One of the figures shifts something in their hands. You notice it more clearly this time. They are carrying an object, small, irregular, a stone perhaps. They hold it loosely but not carelessly, as if it has some purpose. You watch as they walk, occasionally adjusting their grip, turning the object slightly, almost examining it without stopping. A lesser-known detail sometimes discussed in studies of early human behavior is that the ability to carry objects over the distance became increasingly important with upright walking, allowing early humans to transport food tools or materials more efficiently. You notice how their hands are free now, not needed for movement, available. This simple change opens new possibilities. Holding, carrying, manipulating. You follow as the group approaches a small cluster of low vegetation. They slow. One crouches, reaching toward the ground, gathering something small, perhaps edible, though it is difficult to see clearly. Another remains standing, watching, the upright posture again. Always aware, you begin to sense a pattern. Some gather, some observe, not assigned, but naturally occurring. A quiet division of attention. Some researchers suggest that even early hominin groups may have benefited from individuals taking on slightly different roles in a flexible way, depending on immediate needs rather than fixed structures. The wind shifts again, carrying a faint warmth. The sun continues its steady path across the sky. You notice how the group moves more across the day than at night, covering ground, exploring, searching. A familiar pattern begins to emerge. Day for movement, night for stillness. A practical observation in early human studies indicates that daylight hours were essential for most activities, as limited night vision and lack of artificial light made nighttime movement risky. You step over a small ridge in the ground. The soil here feels slightly firmer, packed more tightly, perhaps shaped by repeated movement over time. The group moves along this subtle path, not clearly defined, but worn just enough to suggest it has been used before. Memory. Not written, but repeated. You might not think of it immediately, but even this simple pattern could reflect early forms of spatial awareness, the ability to remember routes and locations over time. Scientists continue to debate the extent of such memory in early humans, but many agree that navigation and environmental familiarity would have been essential for survival. The group pauses again, this time near a slightly elevated area. From here, the land stretches out in multiple directions. They remain still for a moment, looking, assessing. The upright posture becomes more noticeable now, more consistent, not just occasional, but part of their movement. A quirky observation noted in some studies is that walking upright also reduces the amount of body exposed directly to the sun at midday, potentially helping early humans manage heat more effectively in open environments. You feel the warmth yourself now. The sun rests higher overhead. The air feels dry but not uncomfortable. A light breeze moves across the land, offering brief relief. You watch as one of the figures shifts their weight, adjusting their stance. Balanced, efficient. Their body seems designed for this. Not perfect, but improving. Gradually, you take a slow breath. The air fills your lungs easily. The scent of earth remains steady. The sounds around you are minimal but present. Distant movement, occasional calls, the soft sound of footsteps against the ground. And as you walk alongside these early humans, observing the quiet transformation in the way they move, the way they see, the way they interact with their environment, you begin to sense something deeper. This change is not dramatic, not sudden. It does not announce itself, but it matters, because from this simple shift, standing a little taller, seeing a little further, carrying a little more, everything else begins to follow. And yet at this moment there is no certainty, no clear outcome, only possibility. You look ahead, the land continues endlessly, unchanged, unclaimed, and the figures move forward, step by step, unaware of what they are becoming, unaware of what this small change will eventually allow, but already moving in that direction, quietly, naturally. As the day begins to soften once again and the long shadows slowly return, you feel that gentle rhythm continuing, the journey unfolding, not in leaps, but in small, steady steps. The light begins to soften again as the day slowly leans toward evening, and you continue walking alongside the group, your steps quiet, your attention drawn more and more to their movements. At first, everything seems familiar, the same steady pace, the same careful awareness. But then something small begins to stand out, not in how they walk, but in how they use their hands. You notice one of them pause near a patch of ground scattered with stones. They crouch low, their fingers moving across the surface, brushing aside dust and smaller fragments as if searching for something specific. Their movements are slow, deliberate, not random. They pick up a stone, turn it, examine it, then set it aside. Another, similar, also discarded. Then a third. This one they hold a little longer. You find yourself watching closely now. Their fingers trace the edges of the stone, feeling its shape, its weight. There is no clear sign of what they are looking for, but there is intention in the selection. A widely accepted understanding in human evolution is that early hominins began to develop increased dexterity in their hands, allowing for more precise grip and manipulation of objects compared to earlier primates. You move a little closer. Carefully, the figure adjusts their grip again, turning the stone in their palm. Their thumb presses against its surface, testing its texture, its edge. You begin to notice something subtle. The hand itself. It moves differently. More control. More precision. The fingers close around the object in a way that feels purposeful rather than instinctive. Another member of this group approaches, watching briefly before returning to their own search nearby. There is no instruction, no spoken explanation, and yet there is observation, learning without words. A lesser-known detail sometimes highlighted in anthropological studies is that early humans likely learned many behaviors simply by watching others, gradually imitating actions that appeared useful. You see it happening here. One observes, another imitates. Slowly, naturally, you take a step back, giving them space. The wind moves lightly across the ground, lifting small particles of dust that drift briefly before settling again. The air carries a faint dryness mixed with the subtle scent of warm stone. The figure stands again, still holding the selected stone. They walk a short distance, then stop. You notice how they shift their attention, now scanning the ground, then looking back at the object in their hand. There is a connection forming between object and action. They crouch again, this time near a harder surface, a larger rock embedded in the ground. You feel your focus sharpen. They raise the stone slightly, then bring it down, a soft sound, not loud, but distinct. Stone against stone. They pause, look at the result, then repeat the motion. Another soft strike. A small fragment breaks away. You lean in slightly, watching. This is not random movement. This is repetition. Adjustment. They strike again. The angle changes slightly. Another fragment falls. You begin to understand what you are seeing. The beginning of shaping. A foundational idea in early human history is that the creation of simple stone tools marked one of the earliest forms of technological behavior, allowing humans to modify their environment in ways that other species could not. The figure pauses, examining the broken edge. They turn the stone again, adjusting their grip, then strike once more. The sound echoes softly in the open space. A rhythmic pattern begins to form. Strike. Pause. Observe. Strike again. Nearby, another member of the group begins to watch more closely. Their body leans slightly forward, their attention focused. No words are exchanged, but the moment feels shared. Researchers continue to question exactly how intentional early toolmaking was, with some suggesting that it may have begun as simple experimentation rather than fully planned design. You watch as the figure lowers the stone. They run their fingers along the newly formed edge, testing it, feeling it. Then almost without hesitation they use it. They reach toward a small object on the ground, something organic, perhaps plant material, and press the edge against it. A slicing motion. Not perfect, but effective. You feel a quiet sense of realization. This is new. Not just holding, not just carrying, but altering, using one object to change another. A small step, but a significant one. You look around. The environment remains the same. Open land, scattered vegetation, distant sounds, but something has shifted within it. A new interaction, a new possibility. A curious observation often mentioned in discussions of early tools is that even the simplest stone implements required an understanding of cause and effect, recognizing that certain actions produced useful results. You notice how the others respond. Some continue with their own tasks, but a few remain watching, learning, absorbing. The figure sets the tool down briefly, then picks it up again, adjusting their grip. There is no sense of completion, only continuing. Improvement. You begin to sense that this process will not end here. It will repeat, again and again, each time slightly different, each time slightly refined. You take a slow breath. The air feels warm against your skin, the sun now beginning its gradual descent once more. Time passes, measured not in minutes, but in actions, in repetition, in quiet discovery. You notice how the group begins to gather again, slowly shifting toward a more central space as the light softens. The tool remains in the figure's hand, carried now, kept, not discarded, that detail stays with you, into you, because it suggests memory, recognition of value. Some scholars suggest that the decision to keep tools for later use marks an important step in cognitive development, indicating planning beyond the immediate moment, though. Opinions on how early this behavior emerged continue to vary. You follow as they move. The ground beneath your feet feels familiar now, firm, predictable. The wind remains gentle. The sounds of the environment begin to shift toward evening once again. And as you walk alongside them, watching their hands, their movements, their quiet experimentation with the world around them, you begin to feel something deeper forming. Not just adaptation, but interaction. A growing ability to influence, to shape, to change. It is subtle, almost easy to overlook, but it is there. In the way a stone becomes something more than a stone. In the way a hand learns to guide that change. And yet even now there is no clear indication of where this will lead. No sign of tools beyond this. No hint of complexity. Just simple actions. Repeated. Observed. Shared. But already the world is no longer exactly as it was before. Because something new has entered it. A quiet shift. A small beginning. And as the sky deepens into the colours of dusk and the group settles once more into the calm of the coming night, you feel that steady rhythm continuing. The story moving forward. Not with noise, but with quiet intention. The evening settles in once more, and the group gathers in that familiar quiet way you have begun to expect. Their movements slow their bodies lower to the ground, and the fading light softens everything into gentle shapes and long shadows. You sit nearby again, close enough to feel that the shared stillness, far enough to remain only an observer. The tool from earlier is still there, held loosely in one hand, not forgotten, not discarded. You notice how it rests against the ground as the figure shifts position, how their fingers occasionally adjust around it, even without conscious attention. It has become part of their movement, part of their awareness. The night deepens, the air cools, and for a while nothing changes. Only the quiet rhythm of breathing, the faint sounds of the environment, and the steady presence of the group resting under the open sky. But as before, time begins to move again, gently, almost unnoticed. Morning returns. The light spreads slowly across the land, revealing the familiar shapes of the terrain, the scattered vegetation, and the figures rising once more from their resting positions. They stretch, shift, stand, and begin to move. You follow, gain your steps steady, your attention drawn immediately back to their hands, because now something is different. Not entirely new, but more frequent, more intentional. One of them pauses early in the day, returning to a patch of ground similar to the one from before. Stones lie scattered across the surface, some partially buried, others exposed. They crouch, begin searching again, but this time the movement feels more certain, less exploratory. They pick up one stone, discard it quickly, another, also rejected, then a third, held longer. You recognize the pattern, selection, not random, but guided. A commonly accepted idea in archaeology is that early stone tool production, often associated with what is known as Oldowan technology, involved selecting specific types of stone that could break in predictable ways to create sharp edges. You watch closely. The figure carries the chosen stone to a harder surface again, raises it, strikes, a sharper sound this time, more precise. The fragment that breaks away is larger, cleaner. They pause, examine, then strike again. The rhythm returns, but now it is more controlled, less uncertain. Nearby, another member of the group begins to imitate the action. They pick up a stone, turn it awkwardly at first, then attempt to strike. The sound is dull, the fragment small. They pause, adjust, try again, this time slightly better. You begin to see it clearly, not just individual discovery, but shared behavior. A quieter detail sometimes mentioned in discussions of early human culture is that even the simplest technologies can spread through groups by observation and imitation without the need for formal teaching. You step slowly around them, observing from a different angle. The ground is marked now, small fragments scattered where repeated strikes have taken place. The air carries a faint scent of dust and stone, subtle but noticeable as the activity continues. You watch the hands again, the grip. The movement of the fingers, the way the thumb presses against the stone to stabilize it. Precision, developing. You might not think of it immediately, but this level of control requires coordination between mind and body and ability to guide movement with increasing accuracy. Some researchers propose that tool-making may have played a role in shaping brain development, encouraging problem-solving and motor control, though the exact relationship remains an area of ongoing study. The group continues working. Not all of them. Some move off to gather, others remain watching, but enough are engaged that the behavior feels established, repeated, recognized. You notice how the tools are no longer left behind. Once shaped, they are carried, held carefully, sometimes tucked into the hand while walking, sometimes set down briefly, then picked up again. There is value here, even if it's not fully understood. You follow as the group begins to move, again the newly shaped tools traveling with them. The landscape stretches ahead unchanged in its openness, but now interacted with differently. A small object on the ground is approached. One of the figures kneels, uses the tool, a slicing motion again, more effective this time. The material separates more easily. You begin to understand how this changes things. Food becomes easier to access, materials easier to process, time saved, energy conserved. A curious observation sometimes noted in early human studies is that even small improvements in efficiency can have large impacts over time, influencing survival and reproductive success. You walk alongside them, your pace slow and steady. The sun rises higher, the air warms, the wind remains gentle, and yet everything feels slightly altered. Because the interaction between human and environment has shifted again. You notice something else now, a figure carrying more than one object, one in each hand, switching between them, testing, comparing. There is experimentation here, not just repetition. You might wonder whether they understand what they are doing in a broader sense, whether they think ahead, plan, improve deliberately. Researchers continue to explore this question, with some suggesting that early tool-making may have involved a mix of instinct, trial and error, and emerging cognitive ability. The group pauses again near a small cluster of vegetation. Some begin gathering, others remain with the tools, working, refining. A piece breaks cleanly, the edge sharper than before. The figure runs their finger along it carefully, then uses it again, this time with greater confidence. You feel the quiet progression, not dramatic, but real. You take a slow breath. The air feels warm. The scent of dry grass mixes with the faint dust stirred by movement. The sounds remain minimal. Soft footsteps, occasional contact of stone against stone, the distant presence of life continuing around you. And as you watch, you begin to sense something deeper forming, not just the use of tools, but the beginning of knowledge, shared, observed, repeated, refined, passed along without words. Some scholars suggest that this kind of shared learning marks an early foundation of culture, though defining exactly when culture begins remains a subject of ongoing debate. The idea lingers with you. Culture, not written, not spoken, but present, in action, in imitation, in memory. You continue walking as the day moves forward. The tools remain with them, zed when needed, carried when not, integrated into their daily rhythm. And as the light begins to soften once more, signaling the approach of evening, you notice how natural it all feels now, as if it has always been this way. But you know it has not. This is new, still forming, still uncertain, and yet already essential, because with each small improvement, each repeated action, each shared observation, something is building, slowly, quietly, and as the group settles again for the night, their tools resting nearby, their movements slowing their presence, blending once more into the calm of the darkening world, you feel that steady rhythm continuing, the journey unfolding. One small discovery at a time, the night passes gently as it always seems to, without interruption or urgency. The group rests in quiet proximity, their bodies arranged in a loose pattern that feels both natural and intentional. You remain still among them. The tools lie nearby, close enough to reach, close enough to remember, and as the darkness slowly gives way to the first traces of morning, the air begins to shift once again. Cool at first, cool at first, then gradually in your warming. The light returns in soft layers spreading across the land, revealing familiar shapes that now feel slightly changed, not because the landscape itself is different, but because the way it is experienced has begun to evolve. You rise with the group. Their movements are unhurried, their bodies adjusting to the day with quiet efficiency. Hands move instinctively, some reaching for tools, others brushing against the ground as they steady themselves. You notice how naturally the objects are picked up now. No hesitation, no searching. They are remembered, kept, used again. The group begins to move, spreading slightly as they walk, their attention divided between the ground, the distance, and each other. The rhythm is familiar, but today something unexpected waits ahead. You feel it before you see it. A change in the air, a faint scent, sharp, unfamiliar, carried gently by the wind. You pause. The group pauses. Heads lift, bodies bodies still. The scent lingers. You follow its direction, and then you see it. A thin line rising into the air, soft, grey, moving upward in slow shifting patterns. Smoke. You take a slow step forward. Careful, curious. The group moves as well, but more cautiously now, their formation tightening slightly as they approach the source. The ground changes subtly under your feet. Darker, marked. There is a patch ahead where the earth looks different, scattered with blackened fragments, and at the centre of it something glows faintly. Not bright, not strong, but alive. A quiet, steady warmth. Fire! You stop, watching. The group does the same. No one moves closer first. There is attention here. Not fear exactly, but uncertainty. A well-established finding in human evolution is that early encounters with fire were likely accidental, often caused by natural events such as lightning strikes, leaving behind smouldering areas that early humans could observe and eventually learn from. You notice how the figures react. They remain at a distance, watching, listening. The fire shifts slightly, a small movement as something within it collapses inward. A soft crackling sound reaches your ears, subtle, irregular. You feel the warmth even from here, a faint wave against your skin. The air smells different now, dry, sharp, almost bitter. One of the figures takes a step forward, slowly, carefully. They pause again, watching the glowing centre. Another follows, then stops. There is no rush, only observation. A quiet detail, sometimes mentioned in studies of early human behaviour, is that initial interactions with fire were likely cautious and gradual, with early humans learning its properties over time rather than immediately controlling it. You move slightly closer as well. The warmth becomes more noticeable. The light flickers, gently casting small shifting shadows on the ground around it. The group circles the area at a distance, never too close, always aware. One of them picks up a small branch, holds it, then extends it slightly toward the edge of the fire. The tip darkens, begins to smoke. They pull it back quickly, drop it. Watch. The others observe. Learning. The action repeats. Another attempt, this time held slightly longer. The branch glows faintly at the end before being pulled away again. You begin to understand what is happening. Testing. Exploring. A process of discovery. You might assume that the use of fire would be immediate, but it was not so simple. Experts continue to explore how long it took for early humans to move from observing fire to controlling it, with estimates suggesting a gradual process that unfolded over hundreds of thousands of years. The group settles nearby, not directly next to the fire, but closer than before, close enough to feel its warmth. The temperature difference is clear now. Where the air was cool, it is now gently warm. Where shadows were deep, they now move with the flickering light. You sit as well, letting the warmth reach you. It's different from the sun, more focused, more constant. The smell lingers in the air, mixing with the scent of earth and dry vegetation. You notice how the group adjust their positions, turning slightly toward the fire, leaning into the warmth. A subtle shift, but meaningful. An interesting observation in anthropological research is that fire may have extended the usable hours of the day, allowing early humans to remain active and social after sunset rather than retreating immediately into darkness. The light begins to fade again. Evening approaches, but this time the darkness does not arrive in the same way. The fire remains, a steady glow against the deepening night. The group stays closer together now, more tightly gathered than before. Their movements slow, their attention drawn toward the centre. You notice the difference immediately. The night feels less uncertain, less exposed. The sounds of the environment are still present, but they feel further away, muted, as if the circle of light creates a boundary, a small space of safety. You hear a soft sound, not from the fire, From the group, a low vocalization, another responds, then another. Not language, but more frequent, more relaxed. You begin to sense something new, connection, a shared space, a shared experience. Some researchers suggest that fire may have played a role not only in survival, but in social development, creating environments where communication and bonding could grow more complex. You look around, faces illuminated by a recurring light, eyes reflecting the glow, hands resting, tools nearby. The fire continues to crackle softly, occasionally shifting, occasionally sparking, but steady, reliable. For now, you take a slow breath. The warmth settles into your body. The light softens your surroundings. The sounds of the night feel distant. And as you sit there watching the group gather around this quiet source of heat and light, you begin to understand something deeply important. This changes everything. Not all at once, not in a way that announces itself, but in small, steady ways. Longer days, safer nights, warmer bodies, closer groups. And yet even now there is no certainty, no understanding of where this will lead. Only this moment, a group gathered around a fragile flame, learning, adapting, slowly. And as the fire continues its quiet glow and the night settles gently around you, you feel that same steady rhythm. The journey moving forward, one quiet discovery at a time. The fire remains through the night. It does not roar or flare wildly, but settles into a steady glow, its light rising and falling in soft pulses. You stay close enough to feel its warmth, noticing how different the night feels now compared to before. The darkness no longer presses in the same way. It lingers at the edges, held back by a circle of light that moves gently with each flicker. You shift slightly on the ground. The warmth reaches your hands, your arms, your face. It feels focused, almost comforting in a way that the open night air never quite was. Around you the group remains gathered, closer than before. Their bodies arranged in a loose circle, their movements minimal, their attention drawn again and again toward the fire. A widely recognized finding in human studies is that once fire became a regular part of life, it allowed early humans to extend their waking hours beyond daylight, creating new opportunities for interaction and rest. You notice this immediately. No one retreats fully into stillness. There are small movements, subtle adjustments, a hand shifts, a head turns, a quiet sound passes from one to another. You listen. The vocalizations are soft, more frequent than before, less urgent, almost exploratory. You might not call it conversation, but it is something closer to it. A subtle point often mentioned by researchers is that firelight may have created a setting where early forms of communication became more practiced as groups spent more time together in close proximity during the evening. You look into the flames. They move in patterns that feel unpredictable yet strangely consistent. Small pieces collapse inward, glowing briefly before fading into darker tones. The sound is gentle, a soft crackle, occasional shifts. The air carries a faint scent of smoke mixed with something slightly sweet from whatever material is burning. You take a slow breath. The warmth settles deeper into your body. The cool edge of the night remains, but it no longer reaches you in the same way. You notice how the group responds to this. Some lean slightly toward the fire. Others remain just at the edge of its warmth, but no one moves far away. Distance is no longer necessary. An interesting observation in anthropological work is that fire may have reduced the need for constant vigilance at night, as many predators are naturally cautious of flames and light. You sense that here. The sounds of the night continue, but they feel distant, less immediate, less threatening. You hear movements somewhere beyond the circle of light. A rustle, then stillness.
No reaction from the group.
Only a slight pause, then calm again. You begin to understand. The fire changes not only the environment, but perception. It creates a boundary, a space where the outside world feels just a little further away. You shift your position slightly, adjusting your weight on the ground. The earth is still firm beneath you, but the warmth above it creates a contrast that feels grounding. Your body relaxes, more than before, more than in the open dark. The group remains quiet but not silent. There are small sounds, a soft exhale, a low vocal tone, a faint movement of hands against the ground. You watch as one of them reaches toward the fire, carefully, not touching the flames, but adjusting a piece of material at the edge. The glow shifts slightly, brightens, then settles again. You recognize this now. Not just observation, but interaction. a growing familiarity. A detail that is sometimes overlooked is that maintaining a fire requires attention even in its simplest form, suggesting an early understanding of cause and effect and a sense of responsibility within the group. You follow the movement of the light across their faces. The shadows change with each flicker, creating shapes that shift and soften. Eyes reflect the glow. Hands move in small, deliberate ways. There is a quiet focus here, not on survival alone, but on presence, shared presence. You might wonder what they feel in this moment, whether there is comfort, recognition, a sense of something new. Experts continue to explore how fire influenced early human psychology, with some suggesting it may have contributed to feelings of security and social connection, though the exact experience remains beyond full understanding. You look up at the sky. The stars are still there, bright, unchanging, but now they feel further away, less central. The fire draws your attention back down, to the immediate, to the shared space. Time moves slowly, measured in the gentle shifting of light, in the gradual settling of bodies, in the quiet continuation of breath. You notice how the group remains awake longer. No sudden retreat into stillness, no complete withdrawal. Instead, a gradual transition. Awake, then resting, then awake again. A soft rhythm, a new pattern. You feel it in yourself as well. The urge to sleep is there, but it is different, less immediate, more gradual. You remain aware for longer, watching, listening. You begin to sense that this change will extend beyond the night. Longer waking hours, more time together, more opportunities to observe, to learn, to share. Some researchers suggest that this extended time may have played a role in the development of more complex social behaviors as individuals had more opportunities to interact in low-pressure environments. You let that settle. It feels quiet, but important. You look around once more. The group remains close, the fire steady, the night calm, and as you sit within this circle of light, you begin to understand something that is not immediately visible but deeply significant. This is not just warmth, not just light. It is time given back, time to rest without fear, time to observe without urgency, time to be together. And in that time, something begins to grow, slowly, naturally, not forced, not directed, but emerging. You take another slow breath. The air feels softer here, the warmth consistent, the sounds distant. Your body settles further, your thoughts slow, and as the fire continues its gentle glow and the group gradually drifts toward rest, their presence steady and close, you feel that same quiet rhythm continuing, the journey unfolding, now not only through space, but through time itself. The fire burns low as the night stretches on its glow, softening into deeper shades of red and orange. You remain within its warmth, noticing how the edges of the light fade gently into darkness, never abruptly, always in a gradual transition. Around you the group rests, not entirely asleep, not fully awake. Some shift, slightly adjusting their position. Others remain still, their breathing slow and steady. The fire crackles softly at intervals, a quiet reminder that it is still there, still active, still part of this shared space. You feel time passing in a different way now, not marked by urgency, not divided into strict moments, but flowing, evenly, calmly. And as the first hints of morning begin to touch the horizon, the group stirs again. Not suddenly, but in a slow return to movement. A hand lifts, a body shifts, eyes open. The fire is still glowing, though weaker now. One of them leans forward, adjusting it, placing a small piece of dry material near the edge. The glow brightens slightly, the light returning in a soft wave. You recognize this now. Maintenance, not just discovery, not just use, but care. A widely recognized understanding in early human studies suggests that once fire became part of daily life, maintaining it became a shared responsibility requiring attention, memory, and cooperation. You rise with the group. The morning air feels cooler again, though the presence of the fire softens the transition. The sky lightens gradually, revealing the land in soft tones. The group begins to move outward, spreading across the nearby area. Some gather materials, small branches, dry pieces of plant matter. Others remain near the fire, watching, adjusting. You follow one of them as they move a short distance away. They crouch, collecting thin, dry fragments from the ground. Their movements are precise, selecting only certain pieces, ignoring others. There is intention here, choice, A subtle observation sometimes mentioned in research is that even early fire use required some understanding of which materials would burn effectively, suggesting a growing awareness of properties within the environment. You return toward the center. The collected materials are placed near the fire, not thrown in randomly, but added carefully. The glow responds, brightens, then settles again. The process repeats. You begin to notice something beyond the fire itself, the way the group organizes around it. There is no leader, no visible instruction, and yet actions are coordinated. One gathers, another maintains, another watches. A few rest. Then roles shift, fluid, responsive. Some researchers propose that early human groups likely relied on flexible cooperation rather than fixed roles, allowing individuals to adapt to immediate needs as situations changed. You watch as one of them gestures slightly towards another, a small movement, almost unnoticeable, but the other responds, adjusts their position, moves closer to the fire. You feel it again. Communication, not formal, not structured, but present. A shared understanding built through repeated interaction. You take a slow breath. The air now carries a mix of scents. Smoke, dry vegetation, earth, warmth. It feels layer. Complex, more than before. You notice how the group remains closer together now, even as they begin their day. The fire stays central, a point of return, a place that anchors their movement. An interesting detail often noted by anthropologists is that central gathering places such as fire sites may have contributed to the development of social cohesion, giving groups a shared location for interaction and rest. You step slightly away, observing from a distance. The landscape remains open, unchanged in its structure, but the behavior within it has shifted. Movement is no longer entirely scattered. It returns, circles, connects. You follow as a few move outward to gather. Their tools are used again, slicing, breaking, collecting, then brought back, always back. You begin to see the pattern clearly. Clearly. This is no longer just survival in motion. It is survival with a center. You might not think of it this way, but this small shift could be one of the earliest forms of what would eventually become home. Not a structure, not a fixed place, but a repeated point of return, a location remember. Used again. Some researchers continue to explore when the concept of a central living space first emerged, with evidence suggesting that repeated use of specific locations may have begun earlier than once thought, though interpretations vary. You walk slowly around the area. The ground near the fire is darker, marked, used, small fragments scattered from repeated activity, traces of presence. It is of presence. The group moves through it with familiarity, without hesitation, without confusion. You feel it. This place matters to them. Even if they cannot name it, even if they do not think of it in abstract terms, their actions show it. You sit again, watching. The fire continues to burn. Steady, reliable. The group continues its quiet rhythm of movement and return. You notice how their proximity influences behavior. More frequent interaction, more shared observation, more subtle communication. A curious point raised in some studies is that increased social interaction may have supported the development of more complex thinking as individuals needed to navigate relationships, cooperation, and shared expectations. You let that idea settle. It feels connected. You watch as one of them offers a small piece of gathered material to another. A simple act, but meaningful. Sharing. No hesitation, no resistance, just action. You begin to sense something growing here. Not just cooperation, but connection, a deeper layer. You take another slow breath. The warmth of the fire reaches you again. The air feels calm. The sounds remain gentle. And as you sit within this emerging pattern of shared space, shared effort, and shared presence, you begin to understand something quietly significant. This is no longer just a group moving through the world. It is a group beginning to exist together within it, returning, remembering, responding as one, and from that, something larger begins to form, not yet visible, not yet defined, but already present. And as the day continues its slow progression and the fire remains at the centre of it all, you feel that steady rhythm once more. The journey unfolding, now shaped not only by movement, but by connection. The day continues with a quiet steadiness, and you begin to notice how the group moves in a slightly more connected way than before. Their paths still spread outward across the land, but they no longer feel separate. Each movement seems loosely tied to the others, as if an invisible thread keeps them within awareness of one another. The fire remains behind them, still glowing, still present, and even as they walk away from it, there is a sense that they will return. You follow, as the group moves across a gently uneven stretch of ground. The air feels warmer now, the sun higher, the light more direct. The land stretches in soft waves, broken only by patches of vegetation and scattered stones. A figure pauses. They make a sound. It is brief, low, not sharp, but clear. Another turns immediately adjusts direction, moves closer. You stop, listening. The sound was not random. It carried something, a signal, an intention. A widely accepted view in studies of human evolution is that early forms of communication likely began with simple vocalizations and gestures gradually becoming more structured over time. You watch closely now. Another sound follows, different in tone, slightly longer. The group responds again, subtle shifts, small movements, but coordinated. You begin to notice patterns. Certain sounds seem to repeat, not exactly the same each time, but similar, recognizable. You feel your attention deepen. This is not yet language, but it is no longer just noise. It sits somewhere in between. A bridge. You walk slowly, keeping your distance as always. The ground beneath your feet feels warm. The soil slightly firmer as the day progresses. A light breeze passes across the open space, carrying faint scents of dry grass and distant life. The group continues moving. Occasionally one of them makes a sound. Others respond, not always immediately, but often. You notice how the sounds are paired with movement. A turn of the head, a gesture of the hand, a shift in posture. Communication is not only heard, it is seen. A subtle point often highlighted in research is that early human communication likely relied heavily on a combination of vocal sounds, facial expressions, and body language rather than structured speech. You see that here, clearly. One figure raises a hand slightly, not high, just enough. Another pauses, looks, then moves closer. No words, but understanding. You might wonder how much meaning these sounds carry, whether they refer to specific things, or simply express general states. Alert, come here. Look, wait. Researchers continue to explore this question, with some suggesting that early vocal systems may have included basic signals for immediate needs, while others believe more complex meanings may have developed earlier than once assumed. You follow as the group slows near a small cluster of vegetation. Some begin to gather, others remain standing, watching. A sound passes between two individuals, short, soft. One responds with a similar tone. There is a rhythm to it, not musical, but patterned, repeated enough to feel intentional. You notice how the others react. Not all respond, but some do. Those closest, those most engaged. You begin to see how proximity shapes communication. Those near each other exchange more. Those further away rely more on movement and observation. An interesting observation noted by some anthropologists is that communication systems often develop in close social groups where repeated interaction allows shared understanding to grow over time. You take a slow breath. The air feels steady. The warmth consists. The sounds of the environment blend gently with the sounds of the group. Nothing stands out too sharply. Everything feels balanced. You watch as one of the figures uses a tool again, slicing through plant material with controlled movement. Another observes, then attempts the same action nearby. A soft sound passes between them. Encouragement or recognition. You cannot be sure, but it feels connected. You begin to sense that communication is no longer only about survival, not only about warning or direction, but about sharing, about reinforcing behavior, about connection. You step slightly to the side, observing the group from a different angle. The spacing between them feels intentional now. Not too close, not too far. close enough for sound, close enough for sight. You notice how often they look at one another, checking, confirming, responding. A curious idea sometimes discussed in studies of early communication is that the need to coordinate group activity may have driven the gradual development of more complex vocal and social systems. You see that possibility here. Movement is no longer isolated. It is linked, guided, shaped by shared signals. You follow as the group begins to move again. The sounds continue, intermittent, soft, but present. You start to recognize certain tones, not their meaning exactly, but their familiarity. You hear one, then another, and you begin to expect a response. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it does not, but the pattern exists. You feel it. The beginnings of something larger. You take another slow breath. The air carries a faint dryness mixed with the subtle scent of the land warming under the sun. The ground feels steady beneath your feet. The sky stretches wide above you, and within this open space something is forming. Not visible, not solid, but real. A system of connection, built from sound, from movement, from shared attention. You might not think of it as language yet, but it is moving in that direction, gradually, quietly. And as the day begins to soften once more, and the group slowly turns back toward the direction of the fire, guided not by signs or markers, but by memory and shared awareness, you begin to understand something important. This is how complexity begins. Not all at once, not with sudden change, but through small repetition, through shared patterns, through sounds that begin to carry meaning. And even now there is no certainty, no clear structure, no defined system, only possibility, emerging, shaping itself through use, and as the group moves together, their quiet vocal exchanges continuing in soft intervals their steps aligned in a loose but connected rhythm. You feel that steady progression once again, the journey unfolding, now carried not only by action, but by sound. The path back towards the fire feels familiar now, even though there is no visible trail. The group moves with quiet certainty, guided by memory rather than markers. Their steps follow a rhythm that seems practice, shaped by repetition rather than instruction. You walk with them. The light begins to soften again, stretching long shadows across the land. The air cools slightly, signaling the slow approach of evening, and ahead faint at first you see it. The glow, small, steady, the fire remains where it was, waiting, or perhaps simply continuing. The group approaches without hesitation. Some move directly toward it, others circle outward briefly before returning. You notice how natural it feels now, this place, this return. You settle nearby once more, watching as the familiar pattern unfolds. A few gather materials, others adjust the fire. Some simply sit, resting, observing, and as the warmth spreads again and the light flickers softly across the ground, you begin to notice something else, something less visible, but deeply present. Memory, not just in movement, but in behavior. A widely recognized idea in studies of early humans is that memory played a critical role in survival, allowing individuals to recall locations, recognize patterns and adapt based on past experiences. You see it here, in the way they return to the same place, in the way they know what to do upon arrival, in the way actions repeat without needing to be rediscovered each time. One of them reaches for a tool, uses it without hesitation. Another gathers his first materials for the fire, places them carefully. There is no pause to consider, no trial, only action, informed by what came before. You might not think of it immediately, but this is something new. Not just learning in the moment, but carrying that learning forward. A detail sometimes overlooked in discussions of early cognition is that memory does not only store information, but allows patterns to form across time, connecting past actions to present decisions. You watch as one of the figures sits slightly apart holding a tool. They turn it slowly in their hand, examining it, not for immediate use, but as if recalling something. You feel the quiet significance of that moment. This is not reaction, this is reflection. You shift slightly on the ground, the warmth of the fire reaching you once again. The scent of smoke drifts gently through the air, mixing with the dry tones of the surrounding land. The group settles into a loose circle, closer than before, more consistent. You notice how their position repeat, Certain individuals sit in similar places. Certain actions happen in familiar sequences, not rigid, but recognizable. Researchers continue to explore how structured memory may have developed in early humans, with some suggesting that repeated routines helped reinforce learning and group coordination over time. You let that idea settle. It feels present. You watch as one of them gestures slightly toward another. A small movement. A sound follows, soft, low. The other responds, moves closer. There is an exchange, not of objects, but of attention. You begin to sense that memory is not only individual, but shared, built through repeated interaction, through watching, through doing, through being together. A subtle observation in anthropological studies is that shared experiences can strengthen group cohesion as individuals begin to align their behaviors based on common understanding. You see that alignment here? In the way movements match, in the way responses come more quickly, in the way actions require less uncertainty. You take a slow breath. The air feels warm, feels warm, steady. The firelight flickers gently across the group, illuminating faces that now seem more expressive, more responsive than before. You notice small changes, a shift in posture, a glance held slightly longer, a pause before action. These are not large movements, but they carry meaning. You begin to feel that something is building beneath the surface, not visible in any single action, but present across men, connection across time. You might wonder how far this memory extends, whether they recall only recent moments, or whether some experiences linger longer. Researchers continue to question the depth of early human memory, with some suggesting that while long-term memory was developing, it may have been closely tied to repeated behaviors and significant events. You watch as one of the figures reaches toward the fire, adjusting it once again. The glow responds, brightens, then settles. The action is familiar now, repeated, refined. You notice how others do not need to watch as closely anymore. They trust the action, recognize it. You begin to understand something important. Memory reduces uncertainty. It allows action to become smoother, more efficient, more confident. You sit quietly, letting that realization settle. The night deepens around you. The sounds of the environment soften. The group remains close, the fire steady, and within this quiet space you begin to feel the weight of something that is not heavy but grounding. Continuity, the sense that what happens now will shape what happens later, not through planning, but through repetition, through experience, through memory. You take another slow breath. The warmth of the fire remains constant, the light gentle, the presence of the group steady. And as you sit there watching the quiet patterns of behavior repeat, noticing how each action seems informed by what came before, you begin to understand that this is another step forward. Not dramatic, not sudden, but essential. Because with memory, actions connect, learning accumulates, and the path ahead becomes just a little more certain. And as the night continues its calm descent and the group settles once more into rest, their movements slower, their breathing deeper, you feel that steady rhythm again. The journey unfolding, now shaped not only by action, but by remembrance. Morning returns with a soft, gradual light, and the familiar clearing comes back into view as if it never truly left. The fire has dimmed to a low glow, its warmth still present, but quieter now, waiting to be renewed. You rise with the group. Their movements feel steady, almost practiced. Some reach toward the fire, adding small pieces of dry material. Others begin to move outward, stepping into the open land with that same careful awareness you've come to recognize. You follow. The ground stretches ahead, unchanged in shape, yet no longer unfamiliar. There is a growing sense that this space is understood, not entirely, but enough to move through it with confidence. The group walks further than before. Their pace remains slow, but their direction feels more certain. You notice how they do not wander without purpose. They move as if they remember. A widely accepted interpretation in early human studies suggests that as memory and environmental awareness improved early, humans became more capable of navigating larger territories rather than remaining within a small fixed area. You walk beside them, your steps steady, your attention drawn to the subtle coordination within the group. They spread out slightly, not too far, always within sight. A sound passes between two individuals. Soft, short. The other responds with a change in direction. You begin to see how communication and memory work together now, guiding movement, shaping decisions. The land opens further as you continue. The vegetation becomes more scattered, the ground more exposed. The air feels warmer as the sun rises higher, and a light breeze carries faint traces of dry grass across your path. You notice something else. The group does not stop often. They continue, step after step, covering distance. A detail sometimes mentioned in evolutionary research is that early humans were particularly well adapted for endurance walking, capable of traveling long distances in search of food and resources. You feel that rhythm now. Steady, unhurried, but persistent. You walk for what feels like a long time. There is no clear marker of distance, no defined path, only movement, and yet there is direction. You begin to notice small signs, subtle changes in the ground, familiar clusters of vegetation, a slight rise in the land that feels known rather than new. You realize something quietly important. They have been here before. You pause briefly, letting that thought settle. This is not random exploration. This is return. Return to places remembered. Return to resources known. Researchers continued to examine how early humans mapped their environments mentally, with some suggesting that spatial memory allowed them to revisit important locations such as water sources or areas rich in food. The complexity of these mental maps is still being studied. You follow as the group slows near a shallow depression in the land. The ground here feels slightly cooler, more compact. One of them crouches, touches the surface. You step closer. There is moisture, faint, but present. Another begins to dig slightly using their hands, then a tool. The soil loosens. A small pocket of water appears. You watch as they gather it carefully, not wasting movement, not rushing. A lesser-known detail in early survival strategies is that water sources were not always visible, and early humans may have relied on subtle environmental cues to locate them. You feel a quiet sense of understanding. This is knowledge, not obvious, not immediate, but learned, shared, repeated. The group remains here for a while. Some drink, others rest. A few continue to observe the surroundings, always aware. You sit nearby, feeling the cooler air near the ground, the faint scent of damp earth rising gently. The moment feels calm, sustained. You notice how the group does not linger too long. Once their needs are met, they begin to move again. The direction shifts slightly, not random, but adjusted. You follow. The land continues to change in small ways. A cluster of stones, a slight incline, a patch of vegetation that appears more dense. Each detail seems to matter. You might wonder how they remember all of this, how these small features become meaningful. Some experts suggest that repeated exposure to an environment allows patterns to form, turning unfamiliar spaces into recognizable landscapes. You feel that transformation here. What once seemed vast and uncertain now begins to feel structured, not through markings, but through memory. You walk on. The sun begins its slow descent once more, and the light softens across the land. The group gradually turns back, not in a sudden decision, but in a shared shift, a quiet agreement. You recognize the direction now, back toward the fire, back toward the center. You feel it again, that pattern, movement outward, then return, exploration, then gathering. A curious idea sometimes discussed is that early humans may have developed cyclical movement patterns, revisiting key locations as part of their survival strategy, though the exact nature of these patterns remains a subject of ongoing study. You follow as the group approaches the familiar clearing. The fire is still there, faint, but present. Someone moves forward, adds material. The glow returns. You sit once more. The warmth spreads again. The light flickers. The group gathers. And as you settle into this repeated rhythm of movement and return of exploration and memory, you begin to understand something quietly significant. This is no longer just survival in the moment. It is survival across time, guided by knowledge that is carried within. Not written, not spoken, but lived. And with each journey outward, and each return, that knowledge deepens, becomes more reliable, more shared, More essential, you take a slow breath. The air feels warm again. The scent of smoke returns. The sounds of the night begin to rise softly in the distance, and as the group settles into the calm of evening once more, their movements familiar, their presence steady. You feel that same quiet rhythm continuing. The journey unfolding, now carried not only by memory, but by movement across the land. The pattern of movement has settled into something you can now feel without needing to think about it. Day stretches outward. Night gathers inward. The fire glows, fades, then returns again, and you move with this group as they begin another journey across the land. Your steps slow, your awareness gently tuned to the rhythm they follow. But this time something changes. It begins in the air, a difference so slight that you might overlook it at first. Cooler, sharper. You take a breath and notice it more clearly. The warmth of previous days has softened, replaced by a faint chill that lingers even as the sun rises. The group moves forward, but their pace adjusts. Not faster, not slower, but more deliberate. You follow. The ground beneath your feet feels firmer, less yielding. The vegetation becomes thinner, more scattered, as if the land itself is offering less. The wind carries a new quality, colder, more persistent. You notice how the group responds. Their movements stay close, closer than before. Their spacing narrows slightly, not by decision but by instinct. An established understanding in studies of prehistoric climate suggests that early humans lived through periods of significant environmental fluctuation, including colder phases often associated with what we now call Ice Age conditions. You feel that shift now, not extreme, but present. The sun rises higher, yet the air does not fully warm. The chill remains, subtle, constant. You watch as one of the figures pauses near a patch of ground, crouching to examine something. They touch the soil, then lift their hand. The surface is dry, but beneath it harder, colder. Another joins them. They exchange a brief sound, soft, measured, then stand again, continue moving. You begin to notice something else. The group is searching more carefully now, not just moving, but scanning. The land feels less generous, food less visible, resources less immediate. A quieter detail sometimes discussed in anthropological research is that changing climates likely forced early humans to become more flexible in their behavior, adjusting their strategies based on availability rather than relying on consistent sources. You follow as the group reaches a more open stretch. The wind moves freely here, brushing across your skin with a sharper edge. You feel it on your hands, your face a reminder that the environment is shifting. One of the figures adjusts their posture. Their arms cross briefly against their body, a small gesture, but telling. Another pulls something closer around their shoulders. Simple, but intentional. You notice the beginnings of something. Protection. Not yet clothing in the way you might think of it, but an awareness of the body's need to retain warmth. You continue walking. The ground becomes uneven, scattered with small stones that press slightly under your feet. The sound of movement is more noticeable here, each step producing a faint crunch. The group moves carefully, energy conserved, movement measured. You begin to feel it in your own body. The way you walk, the way you hold yourself, the subtle adjustments to maintain warmth. A point often raised in discussions of early human adaptation is that survival in colder environments required both physical and behavioral changes, including the use of shelter fire and eventually clothing. You see the earliest hints of that here. One of the figures pauses again, this time near a small cluster of vegetation. Sparse, low. They crouch, use a tool to gather what little is available. Another stands nearby watching. Always watching. The group does not spread as widely now. They remain within closer distance of one another. Communication passes more frequently. Short sounds, small gestures, quick responses. You begin to understand why. In this environment, separation carries more risk. You take a slow breath. The air feels cooler in your lungs. Clear, dry. The sky above is pale, the sunlight softer, less intense. You look out across the land. It feels larger now, more open, less forgiving. You might wonder how long these conditions last, whether this is temporary or part of something larger. Researchers continue to explore the timing and impact of ancient climate shifts, with some suggesting that repeated cycles of warming and cooling played a major role in shaping human adaptability. though the exact patterns remain complex. You follow as the group moves toward a slight incline. The land rises gently, offering a wider view of the surroundings. They pause at the top. Look outward. Assess. The wind is stronger here. You feel it press lightly against you. The group stands close, their bodies angled slightly against the breeze. You notice how they position themselves, not directly facing the wind, but turning just enough to reduce its effect. A small adjustment, but effective. You begin to see how awareness extends beyond sight and sound, into touch, into temperature, into the feeling of the air itself. An interesting observation sometimes mentioned is that early humans likely developed a heightened sensitivity to environmental changes, allowing them to respond quickly to shifts that could affect survival. You feel that sensitivity growing within you as well. You walk with them as they descend. The ground slopes downward, the air becoming slightly calmer again. The group continues, steady, focused. You notice how they begin to gather materials more frequently now. Small pieces of plant matter, dry fragments, anything that might be useful, carried, kept. You understand? Fuel, for the fire, for warmth, for survival. The connection is clear now. Environment shapes behavior. Behavior adapts in response. You take another slow breath. The scent of the air remains faint, less rich than before, more neutral. The sounds are quieter, fewer insects, less movement. The world feels stiller, and as the day begins to soften once again and the group gradually turns back toward the direction of the fire, their movements more contain their spacing. Closer, their actions more deliberate. You begin to sense something quietly profound. This is not just adaptation, it is resilience, the ability to continue, to adjust and to endure, even as the world changes. And yet there is no certainty here, no guarantee of success, only response, only effort, only the quiet persistence of movement. And as the fire comes back into view, its glow faint but familiar, and the group gathers once more around its warmth, their bodies settling, their breathing. Slowing, you feel that same steady rhythm returning, the journey unfolding, now shaped not only by knowledge, but by challenge. The fire greets you again with its steady glow, and the group gathers close as the evening settles into a deeper chill than before. You notice immediately how everyone moves toward the warmth. Without hesitation, their bodies angled inward, their spacing tighter than in earlier nights. The air feels different now, colder, more persistent. It lingers against your skin, no longer fading as easily with the setting sun. You sit near the fire, letting its heat reach your hands. The warmth feels more necessary now, not just comforting but essential. Around you the group adjusts. One pulls a rough piece of material closer around their shoulders. It is not shaped with precision, not crafted in any complex way, but it services a purpose. Another gathers dry plant matter and places it closer to their body, almost as if creating a barrier between themselves and the ground. You begin to notice these small choices, each one simple, each one effective. Evidence from early human studies indicates that even before fully developed clothing, hominins likely used natural materials such as animal hides or vegetation to protect themselves from cold environments. You watch closely. The movements are not random, they are repeated, learned, shared. One figure adjusts the material around their body, again tucking it slightly, holding it in place. Another observes, then mirrors the action. You feel that familiar pattern. Observation, imitation, adaptation. You take a slow breath. The air carries a faint dryness mixed with the scent of smoke and something else now. A subtle organic smell. Animal. You glance toward the edge of the group. There near one of the figures lies a piece of hide. Rough, uneven, not fully processed, but present. It rests partially beneath them, separating their body from the cold ground. A quieter detail noted by some researchers is that early humans may have begun using animal skins not only for warmth, but also as insulation from the ground, helping retain body heat during rest. You shift slightly. The ground beneath you feels colder than before. The fire helps, but only within its reach. Beyond that, the chill remains. You notice how the group position themselves more carefully now, closer together, not touching constantly, but near enough to share warmth. Their arrangement forms a loose cluster, each body contributing to the comfort of the others. You might not think of it immediately, but this shared warmth becomes another form of survival. A simple act, but powerful. Some experts propose that close physical proximity in early human groups may have played a role in maintaining body temperature, particularly in colder environments, though the exact extent of this behavior remains under discussion. You watch as one of the figures adjusts their position again, turning slightly toward another. The movement is small, but intentional. You begin to sense how awareness of the body extends beyond individual comfort. It includes others, shared presence, shared need. The fire crackles softly, sending brief sparks upward before they fade into the dark. The light flickers across faces that now seem more focused, more inward. There is less movement tonight, less exploration, more stillness. You feel it too. The urge to conserve energy, to remain close, to stay within the warmth. You look around. The world beyond the fire feels distant, colder, less inviting. The sounds of the night are quieter now, almost muted, as if the environment itself has slowed. You hear a soft sound, not from the fire, from the group, a low vocal tone. Another responds. The exchange is brief, but steady. You notice how communication continues even in stillness. Short sounds, simple gestures, a shared awareness maintained. A subtle point often raised is that communication in early human groups likely remained active even during rest periods, helping maintain group cohesion and awareness. You feel the rhythm of the night settling in, the fire steady, the group close, the cold held at the edges. You notice how one of the figures reaches toward the fire again, adjusting a piece of material. The glow strengthens slightly. The warmth increases. You feel it immediately, a direct response. Action leading to result. Repeated, understood. You begin to see how these small behaviors build upon each other, using materials, sharing warmth, maintaining fire. Each one simple, but together they create something more. Protection. You take a slow breath. The air feels colder beyond the reach of the fire, but within this space it remains manageable. You notice how the group settles more deeply now, their movements slowing further, their bodies relaxing, but never fully unaware, always present, always ready. You might wonder how long it took for these behaviors to develop, whether they emerged quickly or over countless nights like this. Researchers continue to explore the timeline of early human adaptation to cold environments, with some suggesting gradual accumulation of small changes rather than sudden innovation. You feel that gradual nature here. Nothing appears all at once. Everything builds, layer by layer. You look at the hide again, at the way it is used, at the way it is held, at the way it remains part of the space. It is not yet refined, not yet shaped into clothing as you know it, but it is a beginning, a step towards something larger. You sit quietly, letting the warmth reach you, letting the steady glow of the fire soften your awareness. The group remains close, their presence steady, their actions familiar. And as the night deepens and the cold lingers just beyond the circle of light, you begin to understand something quietly essential. Survival is not only about strength, not only about movement, but about small decisions, repeated, shared, refined, and from those decisions, something more begins to form, a way of living, a way of adapting, a way of continuing. You take another slow breath. The air feels calm, the warmth steady, the sound soft, and as the fire continues its quiet glow, and the group rests together in that shared space of warmth and awareness, you feel that same steady rhythm once more. The journey unfolding, now shaped not only by the land, but by the need to endure it. Morning arrives with a pale, softened light, and the cold does not leave as quickly as it once did. You feel it lingering in the air even as the sun rises, a quiet reminder that the environment has shifted in a lasting way. The group wakes slowly. There is no rush, only small movements. Hands press against the ground, bodies stretch slightly. Some reach toward the fire, adding dry material, restoring its strength before stepping away. You rise with them. The warmth fades as you move outward, and the air feels sharper again, brushing against your skin with a steady chill. The group begins to walk, closer together than before, more aware, more deliberate. You follow as they move across the open land, your steps matching their pace, your attention drawn not only to their movement, but to how they move together. Because today something becomes clearer. Their actions are no longer just shared. They are coordinated. The group slows near a slightly raised area of ground. From here, the view stretches outward. You can see further. The land opens wide, offering visibility in all directions. One of the figures stops, raises their head, listens. Another shifts slightly, scanning the distance. There is a pause, a stillness that feels intentional. Then a sound. Low, brief. Immediately the others respond, not with panic, but with adjustment. Their positions change. Spacing narrows. A few steps slightly forward, others angle to the side. You feel it. A pattern forming. Evidence from early human research suggests that cooperative hunting strategies began to emerge as groups learned to coordinate their actions, increasing their chances of success compared to acting alone. You watch closely. In the distance, movement appears. Small at first, then clearer. Animals. A small group, grazing, unaware. The figures around you lower slightly. Not fully crouched, but reduced in height. Their movements become slower, more controlled. You feel your own breathing shift, quieter, more measured. One of them gestures, a slight movement of the hand. Another responds by moving outward, widening the group's position. You begin to understand they are not simply approaching, they are positioning. A subtle point sometimes discussed in studies of early hunting is that even simple coordination such as surrounding or guiding prey could significantly improve success rates. You follow as the group spreads, not too far, always within sight. Their movements remain slow, careful. You notice how they use the land, small rises, patches of vegetation, anything that offers even slight concealment. The animals continue grazing, unaware. The wind moves gently across the space-carrying scent away from the group. You realize how many factors matter here. Position, wind, timing. You take a slow step forward. The ground feels firm, the air still, the moment stretched. Then another sound. Short, sharp, different from before. The group responds instantly. Movement increases, not chaotic, but directed. One moves forward, another angles from the side. The animals react. Their heads lift. A brief moment of stillness, then motion. They begin to run. The group follows, not in a straight line, but in a pattern, guiding, pressing, closing distance where possible. You feel the energy rise, not frantic, but focused. A curious observation in human evolution studies is that endurance running rather than speed alone may have played a role in early hunting, allowing humans to pursue prey over longer distances. You run with them, your steps steady, your breathing controlled, the cold air sharp in your lungs, the ground uneven beneath your feet. The animals move faster at first, but their direction shifts, guided, pressured. The group adjusts, maintaining distance, maintaining direction. Time passes in movement, in effort, in coordination. Gradually the distance closes, not through speed alone, but through persistence. One of the animals slows, just slightly. The group responds, closing in. Another sound. Panda. A signal. The final movement comes quickly, not violent, but decisive. Then stillness. The chase ends. The group gathers, breathing heavier now, but controlled. You stand with them, feeling the shift from motion to rest. The air feels colder again now that movement has stopped. But the shared effort brings a different kind of warmth. A quieter detail noted in some research is that successful hunts likely reinforced cooperation, strengthening group bonds and shared strategies over time. You watch as they begin to work. Tools are used, carefully, purposefully. The movements are practiced now, more efficient than before. There is no hesitation, only action. You begin to see how everything connects. Tools, communication, memory, movement, all coming together in this moment. You take a slow breath. The air carries a different scent now. Organic, immediate. The group works together, not evenly, but cooperatively. Some cut, some watch, some rest briefly before returning. You notice how food is not taken individually. It is shared, distributed, without conflict, without urgency. A point often raised in discussions of early human society is that food sharing may have been a key factor in group survival, allowing individuals to rely on collective success rather than individual effort alone. You feel the importance of that here. This is not just a successful hunt. It is a shared outcome, a shared resource. The group begins to move again, slowly now, carrying what they can, returning, always returning. You follow. The fire will come back into view soon. The center, the place of warmth, the place of rest. And as you walk with them, feeling the weight of what has just happened, the quiet coordination, the shared effort, the calm completion, you begin to understand something deeply important. This is more than survival. This is strategy, built slowly, refined through experience, shared across the group, and with it, a new level of capability, not visible at first, but undeniable once seen. You take another slow breath, the air cool, the ground steady, the group moving as one, and as the familiar glow of the fire begins to appear again in the distance, you feel that steady rhythm continuing, the journey unfolding, now shaped not only by adaptation, but by cooperation. The return to the fire feels slower today, not because the group moves with less purpose, but because something has shifted within the space between them. The effort of the hunt lingers in their bodies, in the way they carry themselves, in the quiet awareness that seems to bind their movements more closely together. You walk among them. The air is cool again, brushing gently against your skin. The ground feels firm beneath your feet, the rhythm of your steps steady and unhurried. The fire comes into view, a faint glow at first, then clearer, waiting. The group approaches without hesitation. Some move directly toward it, lowering what they carry. Others circle briefly, scanning the surroundings before settling. You sit nearby. The warmth reaches you again, spreading slowly through your hands and arms. The group gathers close, closer than before. There is less space between them now. You begin to notice it in the smallest ways. A hand rests near another. A body shifts slightly closer. A glance lingers longer than it once did. These are quiet changes, but they carry weight. Many researchers believe that early human survival depended not only on physical adaptation, but also on the strength of social bonds, allowing individuals to rely on one another in uncertain environments. You feel that bond here, not spoken, not defined, but present. The group begins to work with what they have brought back. Tools move in practice motions. Food is prepared, shared, distributed. There is no visible conflict, no urgency, only a steady collective process. You notice how individuals wait, allowing others to take part. A subtle balance. One observation that is sometimes overlooked is that cooperation in early human groups likely required a level of trust, even if it was not consciously understood in the way we think of it today. You see that trust now, in the absence of struggle, in the calm exchange. You shift slightly, feeling the warmth of the fire steady against your skin. The light flickers across the group, illuminating faces that seem more expressive than before. You notice a small interaction. One figure offers a piece of food to another. The second accepts. A brief pause, then a soft sound. Low, gentle. You cannot translate it, but you feel its tone. Acknowledgement. Connection. You begin to understand that communication is no longer only functional. It carries something more. Emotion. A small but telling detail is that as social groups grow more interconnected, vocalizations and gestures may begin to carry emotional meaning alongside practical signals. You watch as others exchange similar sounds. Not constant, but present, each one adding to the shared atmosphere. The fire crackles softly. The warmth holds steady. The group settles. You notice how some remain closer to certain individuals. Not randomly, but consistently. They sit near the same place, respond to the same movements. A pattern begins to emerge. Relationships, not formally defined, but visible. Some experts suggest that early humans may have formed stable social bonds within groups which could have supported cooperation and survival, though the exact structure of these relationships remains difficult to determine. You let that thought settle. It feels right. You see it in the way they move, in the way they respond, in the way they remain close. The night deepens. The air cools further. The fire becomes more central again, drawing everyone inward. You feel the difference. The warmth is not just physical. It is shared, reinforced by proximity, by presence. You notice how one of the figures shifts closer to another, their shoulders nearly touching. The movement is small, but intentional. There is no resistance, only acceptance. You begin to sense how connection extends beyond action, into comfort, into reassurance. You take a slow breath. The air carries the scent of smoke and something richer now, the lingering trace of food prepared and shared. The sounds remain soft, a quiet murmur of low tones, the occasional movement of hands, the steady crackle of the fire. You might wonder how these bonds form, whether they are remembered, whether they persist. The truth is not entirely clear. The picture remains incomplete and interpretations differ among those who study early human behavior. But something is something real. You see it in the way they remain together, in the way they respond to one another. In the absence of isolation, you shift slightly, the ground firm beneath you, the warmth steady. Your body relaxes, your thoughts slow. You feel part of the space, even as you remain an observer. The group settles further. Some lie down. Others remain seated a little longer. A few continue quiet exchanges. Then silence, gradual, natural. You notice how rest comes differently now. Not as a complete withdrawal, but as a shared descent into stillness. You begin to feel it as well. The gentle pull toward rest, the slowing of breath, the quiet settling of awareness. And as you sit within this circle of warmth and presence, watching the subtle connections that bind this group together, you begin to understand something quietly profound. Survival is not only about the environment, not only about tools or movement. It is also about each other. The ability to remain, to share, to trust, even without words. And from that, something deeper grows. A foundation, not visible, but essential. You take another slow breath. The night wraps gently around you. The fire glows steadily. The group rests. And within that stillness, you feel the journey continuing, now shaped not only by action, but by connection that lingers beyond it. The night settles into a deeper quiet, and for a while nothing asks for your attention. The fire glows softly, the group rests close together, and the air carries that steady mix of warmth and coolness that has become familiar. You remain awake just a little longer, watching, listening, not because you need to, but because something within this stillness feels worth noticing. The flames shift gently, rising and falling in small uneven patterns. Shadows move across the ground, stretching and folding into new shapes with each flicker. You look at them, and for a moment you notice something subtle, the way your mind follows the shapes, the way it tries to make sense of them. A pattern, a form, something recognizable. Then it fades, replaced by another. You might not think much of it at first, but then you notice one of the figures nearby. They are watching the fire too. Their gaze steady, unmoving. They tilt their heads slightly as if seeing something beyond the light itself. You feel it, that same quiet shift, attention turning inward. Many researchers suggest that at some point in human evolution, individuals began to develop a stronger sense of curiosity about their surroundings, not just reacting to the environment, but observing it with interest. You see that curiosity here? In the stillness, in the watching. The figure reaches slowly towards the ground, picking up a small piece of material. Not for use, not for immediate need, just held, turned in the hand. Examine it. You notice how long they keep it, longer than necessary. You begin to sense something new, not action, not reaction, but reflection. A small but telling observation is that behaviors not directly tied to survival may indicate the early development of curiosity and exploration, though. Exactly when this shift occurred remains uncertain. You shift slightly, the warmth of the fire steady against your side. The air feels calm. The group remains close. But not all are fully at rest. A few sit upright, watching, looking outward, then inward again. You follow their gaze, beyond the fire, beyond the group, out into the darkness. The sky stretches wide above you, filled with stars. The stars, clear, unobstructed. You've seen this before, but now it feels different. Not just a background, but something to look at, something to notice. You see one of the figures glance upward. Their eyes remain there for a moment, then longer. You feel it again, that quiet pull, curiosity, not driven by need, not by danger, but by interest. You might wonder what they think when they look up, whether they see patterns, whether they remember them, whether they assign meaning. The truth is not fully known. Experts continue to explore how early humans interpreted natural phenomena, and there is still no clear agreement on how or when abstract thought began to form. But something is happening here. You feel it, in the way attention lingers, in the way observation continues without immediate purpose. The fire crackles softly. The group remains quiet. The night deepens, and within that calm you notice another small moment. One of the figures draws a line in the dirt, slowly, deliberately. Not deep, just enough to mark the surface. They pause, look at it, then draw another. You watch closely. There is no clear pattern, no obvious meaning, but the action continues. A few lines, then stillness. You begin to understand this is not for survival, not for gathering, not for defense. It is something else. Expression. A quiet detail often mentioned is that early forms of marking or symbolic behavior may have begun long before more recognizable art appeared, though the evidence remains limited and interpretations vary. You sit quietly letting the moment unfold. The figure stops, looks at the lines again, then brushes them away, gone, as if they never existed. But you saw them. You felt their presence. You take a slow breath. The air is cool, the warmth of the fire steady, the sound soft. You begin to notice how your own awareness has changed. You are no longer only observing movement. You are observing thought, not fully formed, not structured, but emerging. You watch as another figure picks up a small object, holds it, turns it in the light, then sets it down. Not used, just handled. You might not call this behavior significant at first, but it is, because it suggests something beyond immediate need, something that exists in the space between action and rest. Some researchers believe that curiosity may have been a key factor in human development, encouraging exploration, experimentation, and eventually innovation, though the exact role it played is still being examined. If you feel that idea settle, it fits. You see it in these small moments, in the way attention lingers, in the way actions are repeated without clear purpose. You look around, the group remains calm, the fire steady, the night quiet, and yet within this stillness something has shifted again. Not in the body, not in movement, but in the mind, a gentle expansion, a willingness to notice, to wonder, to explore without urgency. You take another slow breath. The air feels soft, the warmth consistent. Your thoughts slow, but they do not disappear. They drift, like the shadows, like the light. And as you sit within this quiet space, watching the early signs of curiosity unfold in small, almost invisible ways, you begin to understand something quietly profound. This may be one of the most important changes of all, because from curiosity, everything else can grow, slowly, naturally, without force. And as the fire continues its gentle glow, and the group gradually settles into deeper rest, their movements fading into stillness, you feel that steady rhythm once more. The journey unfolding, now shaped not only by survival, but by the simple act of wandering. The night fades slowly, and the first light of morning returns in a pale, quiet glow. The fire has softened to embers again, its warmth still present, but gentler now, as if resting along with the group. You rise gradually. There is no urgency. Only the familiar rhythm of waking. The air is cool, carrying a faint dryness that lingers from the night. The ground feels firm beneath your feet, and the light spreads across the land in soft, even layers. The group begins to move. Some tend to the fire, others step outward. You follow, but today your attention feels different, less focused on movement, more open, more aware of small details, the kind you might have overlooked before. You walk a short distance with the group, then notice something. A change in the land, subtle at first. The ground begins to rise. Rock appears, not scattered stones, but something larger, more solid. You continue. The air shifts slightly cooler near the rising surface. The wind moves differently here, brushing along the rock with a softer, steadier sound. Ahead, the terrain opens into a shallow rock formation, not enclosed, but sheltered. A partial covering. You step closer. The ground beneath feels smoother in places worn by time and movement. The group slows, then gathers. Some step inside the shaded area. Others remain. Others remain near the edge. You follow them in. The light changes immediately. Softer, filtered. The sounds outside become muted. The space feels contained, protected. You take a slow breath. The air is cooler here, still, carrying a faint scent of stone and earth. You look around. The walls are uneven, natural, marked by time, and then you notice it. At first, it is difficult to see. Just a variation in colour, a darker shape against the surface. You step closer. The shape becomes clearer. A line, then another, curving, intersecting. You feel your attention sharpen. These are not random marks. They follow a pattern. You glance at the group. Some are looking at the walls. Others sit quietly. One of them reaches toward the surface. Their fingers trace along the shape. Slowly, deliberately. You watch closely. There is recognition there. Not surprise. Not confusion. Familiarity. Many researchers point to cave markings in early art as evidence that humans began to create symbolic representations of their world, expressing ideas beyond immediate survival needs. You step closer to the wall. The markings vary. Some are simple lines, others more complex, suggesting forms, movement, possibly the animals, possibly something else. You cannot be certain. And perhaps they were not entirely certain either. You feel a quiet sense of wonder. This is different from everything you have seen so far. Tools change the world. Fire changes time. But this changes perception. You notice how one of the figures picks up a small piece of material. Dark. Soft enough to leave a mark. They press it against the wall. Move it. A new line appears. You watch. The motion is careful, not rushed. Repeated. Another line. Then a pause. They step back. Look! You begin to understand. This is not accidental. This is intentional. A smaller detail often overlooked is that early artistic expression may have required not only physical ability but also the capacity to imagine something that is not physically present. You feel that idea settle. It feels important. You look again at the wall, at the shapes, at the patterns. They do not serve an immediate purpose. They do not provide food. They do not offer direct protection. And yet, they are made. You might wonder why. Why spend time on this? Why create something that does not directly help survival? The answer is not entirely clear. Scholars continue to explore the meaning of early art, with some suggesting it may have had symbolic, social, or even spiritual significance, while others believe it may have been a form of communication or memory. You feel the weight of that uncertainty, and yet the presence of the markings is undeniable. You watch as others approach. Some trace the lines, others add small marks of their own. There is no instruction, no clear structure, but there is participation, shared. You notice how the space feels different from the open land. More contained, more focused. The walls hold attention. Draw it inward. You sit quietly, letting your eyes move across the surface, following the shapes, the curves, the intersection. Your mind begins to form connections. You imagine movement. You imagine full forms. You begin to see what might not be fully there. A curious observation often mentioned is that human perception tends to find patterns even in abstract shapes, suggesting an early capacity for interpretation and imagination. You feel that happening now. You glance back at the group. They remain calm, engaged, present. The fire is brought closer to the entrance. Its light flickers against the walls, causing the markings to shift slightly in appearance. They seem to move, to change. You feel it, a deeper layer, not just seeing, but experiencing. You take a slow breath. The air is still, cool, the scent of stone and smoke blending together. You notice how time feels different here. Slower, more focused, less scattered. You begin to understand something quietly profound. This space is not just shelter, it is something more. A place where attention gathers, where ideas begin to form, where something unseen becomes visible. You might not have expected this, that in a world so focused on survival, something like this would appear. But it has, and it matters, because it suggests something beyond necessity, something beyond immediate need, the ability to create, to represent, to imagine. You take another slow breath. The light shifts gently. The group continues its quiet interaction with the space. The markings remain, silent but present. And as you sit within this sheltered place, watching the early traces of expression unfold on the walls, you begin to understand that another layer has been added to this journey. Not just living, not just adapting, but interpreting the world, and perhaps trying to understand it. The cave holds its quiet presence as the day begins to fade once more. The light outside softens and the shadows inside stretch gently across the walls, shifting with the faint movement of the fire near the entrance. You remain seated for a moment longer, watching, letting your eyes follow the markings again. They seem different now, not because they have changed, but because your attention has. You begin to notice how the lines relate to one another, how some cluster together, how others stand apart. Patterns, not fully clear, but present. You take a slow breath. The air is cool, still carrying that faint scent of stone and smoke. The group around you remains calm, their movements quiet, their attention divided between the fire, each other, and the walls. One of them reaches out again. Their fingers touch a marking. Pause, then move away. There is no urgency in the gesture, only presence. You begin to feel something else forming here. Not just expression, but meaning. A commonly accepted idea among researchers is that at some point in human development, symbolic thinking began to emerge, allowing individuals to represent objects, ideas, or experiences in ways that were not directly tied to immediate reality. You feel the edge of that here. In these marks, in these pauses, in the way attention lingers, you shift slightly, the ground beneath you smooth in places worn by repeated use. The fire flickers softly, sending brief waves of light across the surface of the cave walls. The markings seem to move again, not physically, but in perception. You notice how one shape begins to resemble something familiar, an outline, a form, perhaps an animal. Then it shifts, becomes something else. You realize something quietly important. The meaning is not fixed. It changes with how you see it. A small but revealing point is that early symbolic marks may not have had a single shared meaning, but could have been interpreted differently by each individual, though the exact nature of these interpretations remains uncertain. You let that thought settle. It feels open, unresolved. You look around. The group remains engaged in quiet ways. Some sit near the walls, others near the fire. A few move between the two. There is no clear structure, but there is a shared awareness. You notice a brief exchange between two individuals, a soft sound, a gesture toward the wall. The other looks, pauses, then nods slightly. A response, not in words, but in recognition. You begin to sense how meaning might be shared. Not precisely, not fully, but enough. Enough to connect, enough to communicate something beyond immediate action. You take a slow breath. The air feels calm, the space contained, the outside world distant. You might wonder what these markings represent. Events, animals, memories, or something more abstract. The truth remains unclear. There is still no clear agreement among experts about the exact purpose of early symbolic markings, with different interpretations suggesting communication, ritual, or simple expression. You sit quietly with that uncertainty. It does not feel unsettling, only open. You notice how the group interacts with the space over time, returning to certain areas of the wall, touching familiar shapes, adding new marks. You begin to understand that this is not a single moment, but a process, repeated, built upon. A quieter detail often mentioned is that some cave markings appear to have been created over long periods, suggesting that these spaces were revisited and reused across time. You feel that sense of continuity here. This place holds more than the present. It holds traces of what came before. You look again at the markings, at the way they overlap, at the way older lines fade beneath newer ones, time layered onto the surface. You begin to sense something deeper, memory, not only carried within the mind, but placed into the world. You shift your position slightly, the firelight warming one side of your body while the cool air remains on the other. The contrast feels grounding, balanced. You notice how the group remains calm. There is no tension, no urgency, only presence. You feel your own thoughts slow further, drifting, settling, and yet your awareness remains focused. You watch as one of the figures draws another line, slow, careful, then stops, looks. You follow their gaze, trying to see what trying to understand. You might not fully grasp it, but you feel the attempt. the effort to represent something beyond the immediate. Some researchers suggest that symbolic thinking may have been a key step in human development, allowing for more complex communication and the sharing of ideas across time. Though the exact origins remain difficult to pinpoint, you let that idea rest. It feels connected to everything you have seen. Tools: fire, communication, memory. And now, meaning, each layer building upon the last. You take another slow breath. The cave remains quiet, the fire steady, the markings still. And within this stillness you begin to understand something quietly profound. Humans are no longer only responding to the world. They are beginning to interpret it, to represent it, to hold it in a different way, not just through action, but through thought, through symbol, through meaning. And even if that meaning is not fixed, not shared completely, it exists. And that changes everything. You sit quietly as the light fades further, the fire becoming the primary source of illumination once again. The group settles closer, their presence steady, their movements slow. The markings remain on the wall, silent, but full. And as you rest within this space, feeling the quiet depth of what has begun here, you sense that the journey has reached another turning point. Not visible from the outside, but profound from within, a shift in how the world is understood and how it is remembered. The cave grows quieter as the night deepens and the fire settles into a steady glowing center. The markings on the wall remain visible in the soft light, their shapes shifting gently as the flames move. You sit still. Your eyes drift between the fire and the wall, between light and shadow, between what is clear and what is only suggested. The group around you rests, but not entirely. A few remain upright, watching, thinking perhaps in ways that are still forming. You feel it again, that quiet shift, not in movement, not in action, but in thought, the way attention lingers, the way observation continues even without immediate purpose. You notice one of the figures sitting near the wall. They are not drawing, not touching, just looking. For a long time, you follow their gaze, trying to see what holds their attention. Is it the shape, the memory, the idea behind it? You cannot be sure, and perhaps neither can they, but something is happening, a gradual deepening. Research into human evolution often highlights that at some stage cognitive abilities expanded to include more flexible thinking, allowing individuals to imagine possibilities, recall past events, and anticipate future outcomes. You begin to feel that flexibility here, in the stillness, in the way the mind seems to move even when the body does not. You shift slightly. The ground beneath you feels cool, the warmth of the fire reaching only partway across your body. The air remains calm, carrying the faint scent of smoke and stone. The group remains close, their presence steady, but their awareness feels more inward. Just go now. Less focused on the outside world, more engaged with something within. You might wonder what they think about, whether they remember the hunt, the movement across the land, the patterns on the wall, or something else entirely. The truth is difficult to define. There is still no clear consensus on how early humans experienced thought, especially in terms of abstract reasoning or self-awareness. But the signs are here. Subtle, quiet, persistent. You notice how one of the figures picks up a small object, holds it, turns it slowly in their hand, then pauses, as if considering it, not just using it, not just reacting to it, but thinking about it. A small but revealing detail is that the ability to consider an object beyond its immediate use may indicate the early stages of abstract thought, though this interpretation is still being explored. You watch closely. The object is set down, then picked up again, not out of need, but out of attention. You begin to understand this is not just interaction. This is contemplation. You take a slow breath. The firelight flickers gently, casting moving shadows that seem to invite interpretation. You see shapes again, forms, possibilities. Your mind connects them, rearranges them. You begin to imagine, and then you realize this is new, not just seeing what is, but thinking about what could be. You might not notice it immediately, but this ability changes everything. It allows for planning, for remembering, for imagining something that has not yet happened. Some researchers suggest that this kind of flexible thinking may have played a critical role in human survival, allowing for better decision-making and adaptation, though The timeline of its development remains uncertain. You feel that idea settle. It feels central. You look around. The group remains quiet, but not empty. Their stillness carries weight, as if something is happening beneath the surface. You notice how one of them looks toward the entrance of the cave. The darkness beyond. Then back to the fire, then to the wall. Their attention moves between spaces, connecting them. You begin to sense that awareness is expanding, not limited to a single moment, but is stretching across time. Past, present, possibly future. You sit quietly with that thought, letting it unfold slowly. You notice how your own mind follows a similar path, recalling what you have seen, anticipating what might come next, holding multiple ideas at once. You realize this is not just a change in behavior, it is a change in thinking itself. A quieter detail sometimes mentioned is that increased cognitive flexibility may have allowed early humans to adapt more effectively to changing environments, though. The exact mechanisms behind this development are still being studied. You feel the importance of that, the way it connects to everything. The tools, the fire, the movement, the memory, the markings, each one building, each one supported by this growing ability to think beyond the immediate. You take another slow breath. The air feels steady, the warmth consistent, the cave calm, the group present, and within that calm you begin to understand something quietly profound. This is not just survival anymore. This is understanding. Not complete, not defined, but emerging. The ability to hold the world in the mind, to shape it, to explore it, even without moving. You look at the fire again, at the way it shifts, at the way your mind follows it, then changes it, interprets it, imagines it differently. You feel a quiet sense of wonder and also a sense of uncertainty, because even now, even here, it's not fully clear how this began, or why. The picture remains incomplete. Interpretations differ, but the presence of this change is undeniable. You sit quietly as the night deepens further, the group gradually settling into rest, their breathing slowing, their movements fading. The fire continues its soft glow. The markings remain, and your thoughts drift gently, not disappear, peering, but softening, settling. And as you rest within this space, surrounded by the earliest signs of human thought expanding beyond the immediate world, you feel that steady rhythm once more. The journey unfolding, now shaped not only by action, but by the quiet emergence of the mind itself. Morning returns gently and the cave slowly fills with a soft pale light. The fire has dimmed again, its glow fading into faint warmth as the group begins to stir. You rise with them. There is a calm familiarity now in these movements, in the quiet transition from rest to activity. Some step toward the entrance looking out across the land, others remain inside a little longer, their attention lingering on the walls, on the fire, on each other. You follow them out. The air feels cool but steady, brushing lightly against your skin. The sky stretches wide above you, clear and open, the land extending in every direction. And as you step back into that openness, something shifts in your awareness. You begin to notice not only what humans are doing, but what they are not. You look out across the distance. Movement appears. Animals. Several kinds. Some grazing, some moving in small groups, others alone. Each living within the same environment. Each surviving in their own way. You pause, watching. The group you have followed is not alone in this world. They are one among many. Evidence from evolutionary studies shows that many animal species possess forms of intelligence, communication, and social behavior, each adapted to their own needs and environments. You observe more closely. A group of animals moves together in coordinated patterns, their spacing consistent, their directions shared. Another pauses, lifts its head, listens, then continues. You notice how their awareness is sharp, immediate, focused. They respond quickly, efficiently. You begin to compare. Without intending to. The humans, the animals, the similarities are there. Movement, awareness, response, and yet there are differences, subtle but important. You watch as one of the animals reacts to a sound. Instantly, it moves. No hesitation, no pause. The response is immediate. You glance back at the group of humans. They react to but differently. There is a brief pause, a moment of processing, then action. You begin to understand. This pause matters. A small but revealing point is that humans tend to process information before responding, allowing for more flexible reactions compared to purely instinct-driven responses. You let that idea settle. You watch as another animal approaches a food source. It eats, moves on, no further interaction, no lingering. You look at the humans again. When they gather food, they observe, they share, they remain. There is a difference in behavior, not dramatic, but consistent. You might wonder why other species, some with sharp senses and strong bodies, did not follow the same path as humans. The answer is not simple. Experts continue to explore this question, and there is still no single explanation that fully accounts for human dominance. You stand quietly, letting your gaze move across the landscape. Each species fits within its place. Each follows its pattern, and yet humans seem to be shifting, changing, not just adapting, but transforming the way they interact with the world. You watch as the group begins to move again, their path not random, not fixed, but chosen. They adjust directions slightly, responding to something you cannot fully see. Perhaps memory, perhaps communication. You follow. The ground beneath your feet feels familiar. The air steady, the light soft. You notice how the humans carry objects, tools, materials. You look at the animals again. They carry nothing. They move with what they have. You begin to feel the weight of that difference. The ability to carry, to keep, to return. It changes everything. A quieter observation sometimes mentioned is that the use of external objects to extend physical ability is a rare trait in the animal world, and in humans it becomes central to survival and development. You walk in slowly, letting your thoughts drift, comparing, not judging, just noticing. You see another group of animals in the distance. They move quickly, efficiently, their bodies built for speed. You feel the contrast. Humans are slower, less powerful, less protected, and yet they persist. You begin to sense that their strength is not in any single trait, but is in combination. Tools, communication, memory, curiosity, connection, each one small, but together. Something more. You take a slow breath. The air feels calm, the world steady. You might wonder if this path was inevitable, if humans were always going to become dominant, or if it was one of many possible outcomes. The picture remains incomplete. Interpretations differ widely. Some suggest it was a result of gradual accumulation of advantages. Others believe chance and environmental factors played a significant role. You let that uncertainty remain. It does not feel uncomfortable, only open. You look back at the group. They continue moving, their steps steady, their presence quiet. You realize something. At this moment, there is no dominance, no control, no clear sign of what will come. They are still part of the system, not above it, not separate from it. You walk with them. The land stretches ahead. The animals continue their lives, unchanged, unaware, and the humans move forward, carrying with them something that is not yet fully visible, but already growing. You take another slow breath. The air soft, the ground steady, the rhythm calm, and as you continue this quiet journey, observing the differences between humans and the world around them, you begin to understand something quietly profound. The answer to why humans became dominant is not simple, not singular. It is layered, built over time, shaped by many small changes, some visible, some not, and even now. It is not fully understood. You feel that thought settle gently, not as a question needing an answer, but as part of the journey itself. And as the group continues forward, their movement steady, their presence calm, you feel that same quiet rhythm once more. The story unfolding, not as a conclusion, but as an ongoing mystery. The land stretches ahead in quiet openness, and you continue walking with the group, your steps steady, your awareness softened by the rhythm that has now become familiar. The air feels balanced today, neither too cold nor too warm. A gentle stillness rests across the landscape as if everything has settled into a calm, steady state. You walk, they walk. The ground beneath your feet holds that same firm texture scattered with small stones and patches of dry grass. And as you move forward, your thoughts begin to shift again, not toward what you see, but toward how it all came to be. You glance at the group. Their movements are practiced now. Their actions more certain. Their coordination more natural. It might feel as though everything you have witnessed was always meant to happen, that each step led directly to the next. But something about that idea feels incomplete. You pause for a moment, looking out across the land. The wind moves softly, carrying faint traces of the environment, subtle and unchanging. And you begin to wonder, was this inevitable, or was it something else? Research in human evolution often points out that many developments occurred gradually, shaped by both adaptation and environmental pressures rather than following a predetermined path. You let that thought settle. It shifts how you see things. You watch as one of the figures adjusts direction slightly. A small change, barely noticeable, but enough to alter the path of the group. You follow. The land ahead offers no clear instruction, no defined route, only possibility. You begin to sense how much of this journey is shaped by choice, small decisions, repeated, accumulated over time. A quieter detail sometimes overlooked is that even minor variations in behavior can over long periods lead to significant differences in outcomes. You feel the weight of that, each step, each pause, each adjustment. You look again at the group, at their tools, their movements, their interaction. It is easy to see how these traits provide advantage. But you also begin to notice something else. The environment itself. The land has changed. The climate has shifted. The availability of resources has varied. You realize that the world around them has played a role as well. Not just shaping them, but selecting which traits matter most. Some experts suggest that environmental changes created opportunities for certain adaptations to become more useful, while others became less relevant. Though the exact balance between chance and necessity remains difficult to determine. You walk slowly, letting your thoughts drift. You imagine other possibilities. What if the environment had remained stable? Would the same changes have occurred? What if certain challenges had never appeared? Would these behaviors still have developed? The questions do not have the clear answers. The picture remains incomplete. You feel that uncertainty, not as confusion, but as openness. You notice how the group continues moving without questioning, their actions guided by immediate needs, not by reflection on what could have been. You take a slow breath. The air feels calm, the land steady, the sky wide. And yet within this simplicity, so much has unfolded. You see it now not as a straight path, but as a collection of moments, each one influencing the next. Some larger, some smaller, all connected. You watch as one of the figures picks up a stone, examines it briefly, then keeps it. A simple action, but one that reflects countless previous experiences. You begin to understand how the past lives within the present, not visibly, but through behavior, through habit, through knowledge. You might wonder how much of this is intentional, how much is guided by awareness, and how much simply emerges over time. Researchers continue to explore the balance between learned behavior and inherited traits in early humans, and interpretations vary depending on the evidence considered. You let that thought rest. You do not need to resolve it. You only need to observe. You follow as the group moves across a slightly uneven stretch of ground. The terrain rises gently, then falls. The movement remains steady, uninterrupted. You notice how they adapt to each change without hesitation, adjusting direction, always responding. You feel that responsiveness in yourself as well, a growing alignment with the environment. You look out across the horizon. It stretches endlessly, unchanged, and yet everything within it is in motion. You begin to sense something quietly profound. Human dominance, if it will come, is not the result of a single change, not a single moment, not a single advantage. It is the result of many small factors working together over time, some visible, some hidden, some shaped by intention, others are it's by chance. You take another slow breath. The air feels soft, the ground steady, the rhythm calm, and as you continue walking with the group, your thoughts gently unfolding alongside your movement, you begin to understand something important. There is no simple answer, no single reason, only a complex interplay of adaptation, environment, and possibility. And even now, even with everything you have seen, the full picture remains just beyond reach. You feel that gently, like the horizon itself, always visible, but never fully grasped. And as the group continues forward, their steps steady, their presence quiet, you feel that same rhythm continuing, the journey unfolding, not towards certainty, but toward deeper understanding. The day moves forward with a quiet steadiness, and you continue alongside the group, your steps falling into that familiar rhythm. The land stretches gently ahead, neither welcoming nor resisting, simply existing as it always has. And yet something in the air feels different again, not in temperature, not in light, but in the sense that the world itself is not as constant as it appears. You walk for a while without noticing anything unusual. Then slowly signs begin to appear. The ground changes. Subtly, patches of vegetation become more uneven. Some areas seem fuller, others sparse. You notice how the group adjusts without hesitation. They move toward areas with more resources, avoid those with less. Their decisions feel immediate, but you sense that they are shaped by something larger, a broader pattern. Evidence from geological and evolutionary research suggests that Earth's environments have always been in flux, shaped by shifting climates, natural events, and long-term changes that influence which species thrive and which struggle. You let that idea settle as you walk. The ground beneath your feet feels steady, but the world itself is not fixed. You notice a distant rise in the land. The group moves toward it. Their pace remains calm, but there is a slight increase in attention. More scanning, more awareness. You follow. As you approach, you begin to see something. Not clearly at first, just a variation in the terrain, then more defined. A section where the ground appears disturbed, not by the group, but by something larger. You step closer. The soil looks uneven, shifted, as if something passed through with force. You feel a quiet tension, not immediate danger, but awareness. The group slows. They look, listen, wait. You begin to understand. This place has changed. The space has changed. Recently, a smaller detail that is sometimes overlooked is that early humans likely encountered environments that had been altered by the natural events such as storms, droughts, or movements of large animals requiring constant adjustment. You watch as one of the figures crouches touching the ground, feeling it, reading it. They stand again. A sound passes through the group, low, measured. The direction shifts slightly. They move around the disturbed area, not through it. You follow. The land continues, but the sense of stability feels different now. You begin to notice how much of their movement depends on reading the environment, not just seeing, but interpreting. You walk for some time, then the sky changes. Clouds begin to gather, slowly, soft at first, then thicker. The light shifts, becomes diffused, muted. You feel the air change, heavier, more still. The group responds. Their pace adjusts again, slightly faster now, not rushed, but purposeful. You follow closely. The wind begins to move, stronger, carrying a faint scent of moisture. You look up. The sky darkens further. You feel the first drop of rain, light, almost unnoticeable. Then another. The group continues moving, toward higher ground, toward a more sheltered area. You understand, this is not unfamiliar to them. They have experienced this before. Many researchers suggest that early humans had to adapt to unpredictable weather patterns, developing behaviors that allowed them to respond quickly to changing conditions. You feel the rain increase, still light, but steady. The ground begins to soften slightly beneath your feet. The air cools. You follow as the group reaches a slightly elevated area with partial cover. Not complete shelter, but enough. They gather. Closer. The rain continues. Soft. Persistent. You notice how they position themselves. Turning slightly. Reducing exposure. Using what little cover is available. Their movements remain calm. Controlled. No panic. Only adjustment. You begin to understand something quietly important. The world is not stable. It changes. Without warning. Without pattern that can always be predicted. And survival depends on responding to those changes. A point often discussed in evolutionary studies is that adaptability rather than strength or speed alone may have been one of the most important traits for survival over long periods. You feel that truth here, not as a statement, but as an experience. You stand with the group as the rain continues, listening to the soft sound as it meets the ground, as it touches the vegetation, as it blends into the environment. Time passes. Slowly, the rain begins to ease, the clouds lighten, the air clears. The group waits a little longer, then begins to move again. You follow. The ground feels different now. Soft air, marked by the rain. The scent of the air has changed. Fresher, more alive. You notice how the group adjusts once more. Their pace returns to normal. Their spacing widens slightly. The tension fades. You take a slow breath. The air feels clean, the land renewed, and as you walk forward you begin to sense something deeper. The world shapes them, constantly, through change, through challenge, through events both small and large, and they respond. Again and again, you might wonder how many such moments have occurred, how many changes have shaped their path, how many events have influenced what they are becoming. The answer is not fully known. The record is incomplete, and much remains beyond reach. But the pattern is clear. Change happens, response follows, and over time, those responses accumulate. You take another slow breath, the air soft, the ground steady once more, the group moving forward, and as you continue this quiet journey, feeling the subtle impact of a world that is always shifting, you begin to understand something essential. Dominance does not come from a single event, it comes from enduring many, adapting to each, learning from each, and continuing, step by step, through a world that never stays the same. And as the sky clears fully and the land stretches ahead once more in calm, steady openness, you feel that same rhythm returning, the journey unfolding, shaped not only by human change, but by the world itself. The air feels different after the rain, cleaner, cooler. You notice it with each breath as you walk alongside the group, your steps steady, your awareness gently grounded in the present moment. The land has changed in small ways. The ground is softer, darker in places. The scent of earth rises more clearly now, carrying a richness that was not there before. You follow as the group moves across this renewed landscape. Their pace is calm, measured, but there is something else, a quiet focus. They begin to search again, not randomly, but with intention. You notice how their attention is drawn to certain areas. Places where the rain has revealed something beneath the surface. Roots, small organisms, fragments of plant life. You watch as one of them crouches using a tool to loosen the soil. Another joins, then another. The movement becomes shared, coordinated. You step closer. The ground gives slightly under pressure, soft enough to work with. You notice how the tools move more smoothly now. The soil yields more easily. What was once difficult is now manageable. You begin to understand the environment has made something possible. A widely accepted idea in studies of early human development is that diet played a significant role in shaping both physical and cognitive changes, with access to varied and nutrient-rich food sources supporting growth over time. You observe as the group gathers what they find, small pieces, not large, not dramatic, but consistent. You notice how they do not ignore these sources. They value them. They collect them carefully. You follow as they bring the gathered materials together. Some eat immediately, others wait, sharing, distributing. You begin to see how food is no longer just something found. It is something processed, prepared, handled with awareness. A smaller detail often overlooked is that even simple processing of food can increase its nutritional value, making it easier to digest and more beneficial for the body. You feel the importance of that, not as a sudden realization, but as a quiet accumulation. Each small improvement matters. You watch as one of the figures uses a tool to break apart a piece of plant material. Another uses fire to soften something. The combination is subtle, but effective. You begin to notice something else. Time. The way they spend it. They are not only searching, not only reacting, they're investing time in preparation, in making food more usable, more efficient. You might not think of it immediately, but this changes how energy is gained and used. Some researchers suggest that changes in diet, particularly the inclusion of cooked food, may have contributed to the development of larger brains by providing more accessible energy, though the details of the process are still being explored. You let that idea settle. It feels connected to everything. You take a slow breath. The air carries the scent of damp soil mixed with the faint trace of smoke. The group continues their quiet activity. You notice how their movements are not rushed. There is patience here, a willingness to take time. You watch as one of them pauses, examining what they have gathered, turning it, breaking it, testing it, then sharing it. You begin to sense how knowledge grows through this process, not through sudden change, but through repeated experience, through small improvements, through observation. You look around. The land remains open, the sky clear again, the effects of the rain already fade. But the impact remains, resources revealed, opportunities created. You follow as the group begins to move again, their pace steady, their actions complete. You notice how they carry some of what they have gathered. Not everything, but enough. You understand they are thinking beyond the moment. A quieter observation sometimes mentioned is that the ability to store or carry food for later use reflects a shift toward planning and foresight, though the extent of this behavior in early humans continues to be studied. You feel that shift here, in the small choices, in the way actions extend beyond immediate need. You walk alongside them. The ground gradually firms again as you move away from the wetter areas. The scent of earth softens. The air returns to its earlier balance. You notice how your own awareness has changed. You are no longer only observing movement. You're observing process, the way one action leads to another, the way environment and behavior interact. You begin to understand something quietly profound. Food is not just survival. It is development. It shapes the body, the mind, the rhythm of life. You take another slow breath. The air feels steady, the land calm, the group moving forward. And as you continue walking, feeling the quiet connection between what is gathered, what is prepared, and what is shared, you begin to sense how deeply this process influences everything. Not in a way that is obvious, but in a way that builds over time, layer by layer, moment by moment. You might wonder how much of this is understood by the group, whether they recognize the importance, or simply follow what works. The answer is not entirely clear. The evidence offers clues but not certainty. And yet the result is visible. Growth, adaptation, change. You feel it in the rhythm of their actions, in the consistency of their behavior, in the quiet refinement of each step. And as the day begins to soften once more, and the group gradually turns back toward the familiar direction of the fire, carrying with them the results of their effort, their movement steady, their presence calm, you feel that same gentle rhythm returning, the journey unfolding, now shaped not only by survival, but by nourishment. The return to the fire feels quieter today, not slower, not heavier, just softer. The group gathers as they always do, settling into familiar positions, their movement steady and unhurried. The fire is restored with small practiced actions, its glow rising again to meet the approaching night. You sit with them. The warmth reaches you gently. The air cools beyond it. The balance between the two feels natural now, almost expected. You notice how the group relaxes into this space, more easily than before, as if this rhythm has become something dependable. And as you sit there, your attention begins to shift once more, not toward movement, not toward the environment, but toward time. You look at the group, at their size, at the range of individuals present, some larger, some smaller, some moving with steady confidence, others more uncertain. You begin to notice the differences more clearly. The younger ones, their movements are less precise, less efficient. They watch more, act less. They remain close to others, following, observing, learning. A widely recognized idea in human development is that humans have an unusually long childhood compared to many other species, allowing extended periods for learning and growth. You see that here, in the way the younger individuals stay near the older ones, in the way they imitate movements, in the way they pause before acting. You watch as one of them attempts to use a tool. Their grip is awkward, the motion uncertain, the result incomplete. They pause, look, then try again. Nearby, an older individual performs the same action. Smooth, controlled, effective. The difference is clear, but so is the connection. You begin to understand. Learning takes time. You might not think of it immediately, but this extended period of learning allows for more complex skills to develop, more knowledge to be absorbed, more patterns to be understood. Some researchers suggest that longer childhoods may have provided humans with a significant advantage, allowing more time to acquire skills necessary for survival, though the exact evolutionary reasons remain under discussion. You watch as the younger one continues, adjusting, repeating, improving, slowly. The older individual does not intervene directly. They do not guide with clear instruction, but they remain nearby, present, visible. You begin to sense how learning happens here, not through teaching as you know it, but through observation, through repetition, through time. A smaller detail that is sometimes easy to miss is that learning by watching others can be highly effective, especially in environments where formal instruction does not exist. You feel the quiet strength of that process. You notice how the younger individuals spend more time watching than doing, their attention focused, their movements cautious. They absorb before they act. You take a slow breath. The air feels calm, the fire steady, the group relaxed. You begin to see how this extended time of learning shapes everything. Skills are not rushed. They are built layer by layer, experience by experience. You watch as another younger individual follows an older one, mimicking their steps, their posture, their action. Not perfectly, but closely. You begin to understand this is how knowledge spreads. Not quickly, but reliably, over time. You might wonder how long this process takes. How many cycles? How many repetition? The answer is not exact. The picture remains incomplete, but what is clear is that time itself plays a crucial role. You sit quietly, letting that idea settle. The fire crackles softly. The night deepens. The group remains close. You notice how the younger individuals remain near the center, closer to the warmth, closer to others, protected. Not by structure, but by presence. A subtle observation often mentioned is that group living may have allowed for shared responsibility in caring for younger members, increasing their chances of survival. You see that here, in the way space is shared, in the way proximity is maintained, in the absence of isolation. You feel a quiet sense of continuity. The older guide the younger. The younger learn from the older, and over time, the roles shift. You take another slow breath. The warmth of the fire steady, the air soft, the sounds quiet, and as you sit within this space watching the slow, patient process of learning unfold, you begin to understand something deeply important. Human development is not only about innovation, it is about time to learn, time to observe, time to refine, and in that time, complexity grows. Naturally, gradually, you look at the group once more, at the younger ones, at their careful movements, at their quiet attention, and you see the future, not in a dramatic way, but in a steady one, built through patience, through repetition, through shared experience. And as the night settles fully and the group drifts into rest, their breathing slow, their movements minimal, you feel that same gentle rhythm continuing, the journey unfolding, now shaped not only by what is known, but by how it is learned. The night eases into morning with a soft, gradual light, and the group begins to stir once more. The fire has dimmed to a quiet glow, its warmth still present but gentle as if it too is waking slowly. You rise with them. The air feels calm today, balanced. Neither cold nor warm. The land stretches ahead in quiet openness, familiar now in a way that no longer feels uncertain. The group begins to move outward again, their steps steady, their spacing relaxed but connected. You follow. Your attention settles not on the ground this time, but on the space between them, the way they move in relation to one another, the way actions seem to pass through the group, not all at once, but gradually. One begins, another follows, then another. You begin to see it clearly. Learning is no longer only individual, it is shared. You watch as one of the figures stops near a cluster of stones. They pick one up, examine it, then begin shaping it. The familiar rhythm returns. Strike, pause, adjust. Nearby another watches, then picks up their own stone, attempts the same motion, not identical, but similar. You notice how the movement spreads from one to another, without instruction, without direction. A widely accepted view in human development suggests that the ability to learn from others, often called social learning, plays a crucial role in how knowledge is passed across generations. You see that process unfolding here, quietly, naturally. You take a slow breath. The air carries a faint scent of earth and dry grass. The ground feels tender beneath your feet. You watch as the shaping continues. The sounds of stone against stone echo softly across the space. Not loud, but rhythmic, consistent. You begin to notice something else. Variation. Each individual shapes the tool slightly differently. Some edges sharper, some broader, some more refined. There is no single pattern, no fixed outcome, and yet, all are functional. A smaller detail often overlooked is that early toolmaking likely allowed for individual variation, meaning that each person could adapt techniques based on their own experience and ability. You feel the significance of that. Knowledge is shared, but not identical. It changes slightly with each person. You walk slowly around the group, observing. The process repeats again and again. You begin to understand this is not just learning, this is culture. Not written, not spoken, but carried through action, through imitation, through repetition. Some researchers describe culture as shared behavior that is learned and passed on, allowing groups to build upon previous knowledge over time, though. Defining its earliest forms remains a complex task. You let that idea settle. It feels present. You see it in the way the group moves, in the way actions repeat across individuals, in the way knowledge persists. You notice how one of the figures uses a slightly different technique, a different angle, a different rhythm. Another watches, then tries it, adjusts, improves. You begin to sense how ideas evolve, not fixed, not complete, but changing with each use. You take another slow breath. The air feels steady, the environment calm, the group engaged. You might not think of it immediately, but this process allows knowledge to accumulate, to grow, to extend beyond a single individual. You watch as tools are used, as food is gathered, as movements are repeated, each action informed by what has been seen before. You notice how younger individuals observe closely, their attention focused, their movements cautious. They're absorbing everything. You begin to understand how this process continues across time, from one generation to the next, from one moment to another. A subtle observation often mentioned is that the transmission of knowledge through observation and imitation may have allowed humans to adapt more quickly than species relying only on instinct. You feel the truth of that here. You see it in the speed of learning, in the flexibility of behavior, in the variation of technique. You walk with them as they move forward again, the tools carried, the knowledge retained, the process continuing. You notice how nothing is lost. Each action leaves a trace, not on the land, but within behavior, within memory, within the group. You take a slow breath, the air soft, the ground steady, the rhythm calm, and as you continue this quiet journey, watching knowledge move through the group like a gentle current, you begin to understand something deeply important. This is how humans grow. Not just through individual change, but through shared experience, through learning together, through passing on what works, and allowing it to evolve. You look at the group once more, at their movements, at their quiet coordination, at the way knowledge flows between them without words, and you see something powerful, not obvious, not dramatic, but essential. The ability to build on what came before, to carry it forward, to shape it over time. And as the day begins to soften once again and the group gradually turns back toward the direction of the fire, their movements steady, their presence calm, you feel that same gentle rhythm continuing, the journey unfolding, now shaped not only by knowledge, but by the sharing of it. The path back to the fire feels quieter now, not because the world has changed, but because your attention has deepened. You notice more than before, the small shifts in movement, the subtle exchanges between individuals, the quiet patterns that hold the group together. They return as they always do, without hesitation, without confusion. The fire is restored, the glow returns, the group settles, and you sit among them feeling the familiar balance of warmth and cool air. But something begins to stand out, not in the environment, not in the tools, but in the group itself, the way they relate to one another. You look more closely, Certain individuals remain near each other more often. They move together, sit together, respond more quickly to one another. You begin to see the formation of something subtle, not random, not fixed, but consistent, a sense of belonging, a sense of identity. Research into early human societies suggests that group identity may have developed as individuals began to recognize themselves as part of a specific social unit rather than as isolated individuals. You feel that here, not as a concept, but as a pattern. You watch as one of the figures makes a sound. Soft. Directed. Another responds immediately. Their movements aligned. Their attention shared. You begin to notice how these connections shape behavior. Information flows more quickly between certain individuals. Actions are mirrored more closely. There is familiarity. You take a slow breath. The air carries the steady scent of smoke. The firelight flickers gently. The group remains close. You notice a small interaction. One figure reaches toward another. A brief touch. Then withdrawal. Simple, but meaningful. You begin to sense that connection is not only functional, it carries something more. Recognition. Comfort. A small but telling detail is that physical gestures, even simple ones, can play a role in reinforcing social bonds, helping maintain group cohesion. You feel the weight of that. Not heavy, but present. You look around. The group is no longer just a collection of individuals. It feels unified, not in structure, but in awareness. You might not call it identity in the modern sense, but something close, a shared sense of being part of the same group. You notice how they respond to those outside their immediate circle. More cautious, more observant. You begin to understand. Belonging creates distinction. Some researchers suggest that early forms of group identity may have influenced cooperation within groups, while also shaping interactions with others, though the exact nature of these dynamics remains difficult to determine. You let that idea settle. It feels layered. You watch as one of the figures adjusts their position closer to another. They remain there, not by chance, but by preference. You begin to sense that relationships are forming. Not formal, not defined, but real. You take another slow breath. The air feels calm, the warmth steady, the night quiet. You notice how the younger individuals stay closer to certain older ones, following them, observing them. You understand. Knowledge flows along these connections, not evenly, but through proximity, through attention. A quieter observation is that learning may be influenced by social relationships with individuals more likely to imitate those they are closest to or most familiar with. You see that clearly now. The group is not only sharing knowledge, it is shaping how that knowledge moves. You sit quietly, letting your awareness rest within this space. The fire continues its gentle glow. The group settles deeper into stillness. You feel a sense of continuity, of structure emerging without being designed. You might wonder how this changes the future, how these small connections influence what comes next. There is no simple answer. The picture remains incomplete, but the pattern is clear. You look at the group again, at the way they sit, at the way they move, at the way they respond, and you begin to understand something quietly profound. Humans are not only adapting to the environment, they are adapting to each other. Their behavior shaped not just by the land, but by the group, by relationships, by shared experience. You take a slow breath. The air soft, the ground steady, the warmth consistent. And as you sit within this circle of connection, feeling the quiet strength of belonging, you begin to sense how deeply this will influence everything that follows. Not in obvious ways, but in subtle ones, in how knowledge spreads, in how cooperation forms, in how groups persist. You feel the rhythm of it, steady, enduring. And as the night deepens and the group settles into rest once more, their presence calm, their connections quietly holding them together. You feel that same gentle progression continuing, the journey unfolding, now shaped not only by knowledge, but by identity itself. The night passes gently, and when morning returns, it feels almost familiar in a way that would have been impossible at the beginning of this journey. You rise with the group. The fire fades behind you as you step once more into the open land, your body moving with a rhythm that now feels natural. The air is calm, the ground steady, the light soft as it spreads across the horizon. The group begins to move, but something about their movement feels different today. Not in pace, not in direction, but in how it connects to what came before. You follow. The land stretches ahead as always open and wide, yet no longer empty. You begin to notice how places feel known. A cluster of stones, a slight rise in the ground, a patch of vegetation that stands out. These are not random details. tungnails anymore. They are remembered. You feel it in the way the group moves. They do not wander. They navigate. Evidence gathered from archaeological studies suggests that over time, early humans began to use specific locations, repeatedly returning to areas that offered reliable resources. You see that pattern clearly now. The group shifts direction. Lightly, not by chance, but by recognition. You follow as they approach a familiar area. The ground here shows signs of previous activity, small fragments, disturbed soil, traces that remain even after time has passed. You step closer. The space feels different. Not permanently occupied, but revisited. You begin to understand this is more than movement. This is the beginning of place. You watch as the group settles for a while. Some gather materials, others rest. The fire is prepared again, not from scratch, but from memory, from repetition. A small but telling detail is that returning to the same location allows for more efficient use of resources, reducing the need to rediscover everything. Each time, you feel the significance of that. Time is no longer spent only on searching. It is used more effectively. You sit quietly. The warmth of the fire begins to rise again. The group gathers. The space feels familiar. You begin to notice how certain actions happen more quickly here. Less hesitation, less uncertainty. You might not think of it immediately, but familiarity changes behavior. It creates confidence. It allows for refinement. Some researchers suggest that repeated use of specific locations may have contributed to the early development of more permanent settlements, though the exact transition from movement to settlement remains complex and gradual. You let that idea settle. It feels like a distant possibility, not yet realized, but forming. You watch as one of the figures places objects in a specific spot, not randomly, but consistently. You recognize the location. It has been used before. You begin to sense organization, not structured, not planned, but emerging. You take a slow breath. The air carries the scent of smoke and earth. The ground feels steady beneath you. You notice how the group moves within this space. Their paths intersect, overlap, repeat. You begin to see patterns, routes within the area, places for gathering, places for rest, places for work. You understand. This is no longer just a place visited. It is a place used, a place remembered, a place that shapes behavior. A quieter observation sometimes mentioned is that repeated activity in the same location can leave subtle traces that influence how future activity unfolds, creating patterns over time. You see that clearly here. The space guides movement. Movement reinforces the space. You sit quietly, letting your awareness rest within this evolving pattern. The fire flickers, the group settles. The land remains open beyond this point. But within it, something is forming. You might wonder when this becomes something more, when movement becomes settlement, when temporary becomes permanent. The answer is not precise. The picture remains incomplete, but the direction is visible. You look at the group, at their familiarity with this place, at the way they return, at the way they organize themselves within it, and you begin to understand something quietly profound. The idea of home is beginning, not as a structure, not as a defined space, but as a pattern, a place returned to, a place remembered, a place that holds meaning. You take another slow breath. The air soft, the warmth steady, the sounds gentle, and as you sit within this space, feeling the quiet emergence of place and belonging tied to the land itself, you sense how this will shape everything that follows. Not immediately, but over time, through repetition, through memory, through use. The journey continues, but now it has points of return, and as the day softens once more, and the group remains within this familiar space a little longer than before, their movements calm, their presence steady. You feel that same gentle rhythm continuing, the story unfolding, now shaped not only by movement, but by the places that hold it. The familiar place holds you for a while longer. The fire glows softly, the ground marked by repeated use, and the group moves through the space with a quiet confidence that feels earned rather than given. You sit within it, noticing how different it feels from the beginning. The land is still the same, open, uncertain, ever-changing, and yet something within it has shifted. Not in the world itself, but in how it is understood. You watch as the group continues its calm rhythm. Some prepare food, some rest, some observe. The younger ones follow, the older ones act with ease. Everything flows, and as you sit there, your thoughts begin to gather. Not around what is happening, but around what it all means. You look at the tools, at the fire, at the markings that remain in memory, at the movements across the land, at the connections between individuals. Each one a small change, each one a step. And yet even now something feels incomplete. You take a slow breath. The air is warm near the fire, cool beyond it, balanced. You might expect that by now the answer would be clear, that you would see exactly how humans became the dominant species. But instead, there is still uncertainty. Many researchers have spent years studying human origins, and yet there is no single explanation that fully accounts for the rise of humans above other species. You let that thought settle. It does not feel frustrating, only honest. You look again at the group. They do not appear dominant, not powerful, not overwhelming. They are still vulnerable, still dependent on the environment, still adapting. You notice how easily things could change. A shift in climate, a lack of resources, a single event. Everything could be different. A smaller detail often overlooked is how fragile early human survival likely was, with success depending on many factors aligning at the right time. You feel that fragility here, not as weakness, but as reality. You begin to understand something deeper. Dominance was not guaranteed. It was not certain. It was one outcome among many possibilities. You watch as the group continues its quiet activity, unaware of what will come, unaware of what they will become. You might wonder if there was a moment, a turning point, a single change that made the difference. The answer remains unclear. Some suggest it was intelligence. Others point to cooperation. Others to environment. Others to chance. Interpretations differ, and no single explanation fully captures the complexity. You let that uncertainty remain. It feels appropriate. You take another slow breath. The fire crackles softly. The group settles. The space holds them. You begin to see how each element contributes. Tools allow interaction with the environment. Fire extends time and safety. Communication connects individuals. Memory carries knowledge forward. Curiosity drives exploration. Social bonds create stability. Each one important, none alone sufficient. You feel the interconnectedness of it all, like threads woven together. You might not see the full pattern, but you feel its presence. You notice how the group responds to one another, how knowledge, how behavior adapts, how the environment shapes everything. You realize there is no single reason, only a system, complex, layered, evolving. A point often raised in modern research is that human dominance likely emerged from the combination of many factors rather than a single defining trait, though. The exact balance remains an open question. You sit quietly with that understanding. It does not resolve into a clear answer, but it feels complete in its own way. You look out beyond the familiar space. The land stretches endlessly, the sky wide above. Other species continue their lives, unchanged. The world remains shared, and yet you sense what is coming, not as a clear vision, but as a direction, a continuation of everything you have seen. You take a slow breath, the air soft, the warmth steady, the rhythm calm, and as you sit there surrounded by the quiet accumulation of human development, you begin to understand something quietly profound. The mystery is not a flaw, it is part of the cellular screen. Because the path to dominance was not simple, not direct, not fully understood. It was shaped by countless small changes, interacting, building, adapting over time. And even now, looking back, the full picture remains just beyond reach. You feel that gently. Like something that does not need to be solved, only experienced. And as the fire continues its steady glow, and the group settles once more into rest, their presence calm, their movements fading into stillness, you feel that same quiet rhythm continuing. The journey nearing its end, not with certainty, but with understanding. The night settles gently around you, and the familiar space feels quieter than before. Not empty, not absent, just calm in a deeper way. The fire glows softly at the center, its light steady, its warmth gentle. The group rests close together, their breathing slow, their movements minimal, as if everything has eased into its natural place. You remain awake for a while, not because you need to, but because something within this moment invites stillness. You look at them, at the quiet presence of these early humans, at the small group that has carried you through this long journey. They do not appear extraordinary, not in a way that would stand out, not in a way that would suggest what they will become. And yet, you know what lies ahead, or at least you sense it. A widely recognized perspective in human evolution is that the rise of humans did not come from a single moment of transformation, but from the gradual layering of many small changes over time. You feel that truth now, not as an idea, but as something you have witnessed. You think back to the first steps to the open land, to the quiet uncertainty, then to the tools, the fire, the shared sounds, the memory, the markings on stone, the curiosity, the connection, the learning, the belonging, the return to place, each moment small, each moment quiet, and yet each one essential. You take a slow breath. The air feels warm near the fire, cool beyond it. Balanced. You begin to notice how everything fits together. Not perfectly, not neatly, but naturally, each part supporting the others, each change building upon what came before. You might expect that by now the answer would be clear, that the reason for human dominance would reveal itself in a single defining moment, but it does not. The truth remains complex. There is still no clear agreement on exactly why humans became the dominant species, with different perspectives emphasizing intelligence, cooperation, adaptability, or environmental opportunity. You let that uncertainty remain. It feels right. You look at the group again. They sleep, resting, unaware of what will follow, unaware of cities of tools far beyond stone, of stories written and told across generations. They exist fully in this moment. And perhaps that is part of what makes this so remarkable, because nothing here feels inevitable. Everything feels possible. You notice how quiet it is now. The fire soft, the air still, the night deep. You feel your own body relaxing, your breathing slowing, your thoughts becoming softer. You begin to sense that the journey is coming to rest, not ending abruptly, but easing gently towards stillness. You take another slow breath. The warmth of the fire fades slightly as it settles into embers. The light softens. The shadows deepen. The group remains close, their presence steady. You begin to understand something quietly profound. Human dominance is not just a story of strength or intelligence. It is a story of time, of patience, of countless small adjustments, of learning, of sharing, of enduring. A smaller detail often overlooked is that much of human success comes not from dramatic change, but from consistency over long periods. You feel that now, the steady rhythm, the quiet progression. You look once more at the group, at the fire, at the land that stretches beyond them. Everything is calm, everything is present. You do not need to ask more questions. You do not need to search for a final answer. The journey itself has been enough. You let your eyes rest. The firelight flickers softly. The night wraps gently around you. Your body settles further into the ground, supported, at ease. And as your awareness begins to drift, you feel that final understanding settle with you, that the story of humanity is not one of certainty, but of possibility. Not one of sudden change, but of slow becoming. And as the last glow of the fire softens into darkness and the quiet presence of the group fades into stillness, you allow yourself to rest fully. The journey complete, the question still open, the rhythm still calm, and you drift gently into sleep. Word count 1129. The fire lowers to a faint steady low. The night deepens around you, soft and quiet, with no sharp edges, no sudden sounds. The air feels cool but gentle, like a light blanket resting over everything. You notice how the ground supports you, how your body no longer needs to adjust, no longer needs to respond. Everything has settled. The group remains close, their breathing slow, and even a shared rhythm that blends with the quiet pulse of the night. There is no urgency left in the world around you, no movement that asks for attention, only stillness. You take a slow breath, and then another. The warmth from the fire lingers just enough to be felt, just enough to remind you that you are safe, that you can rest. Above you, the sky stretches endlessly, filled with distant points of light that do not demand to be understood. They simply exist. Just like this moment, your thoughts begin to soften, not disappearing, but becoming lighter, drifting, like the gentle movement of air across the land. You do not need to follow them. You can simply let them pass. Your body feels heavier now. Comfortably so. Your breathing slows even further. Each breath quiet, even unforced. The sounds of the world fade into the background. The fire, the wind, the distant night, all blending into a soft, steady calm. And as you rest here at the end of this long, quiet journey through time, you feel something simple and reassuring, that everything continues, that change happens slowly, that understanding does not need to be complete to be meaningful. You are here, in this moment, at ease. And as the final warmth fades into the cool softness of the night and the last traces of thought drift gently away, you allow yourself to settle fully into stillness, into quiet, into rest, sweet dreams.